Welcome, 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Is there a motion for a deputy clerk in Clerk Slater's absence?
I would like to make a motion that Tom McDonald temporarily fill Clerk Slater's shoes for this evening and be the clerk.
Shipley supports.
So motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by trustee Shipley, to appoint trustee McDonald to the position of temporary clerk for the purposes of this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Trustee McDonald, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordic,
Here.
trustee Shipley,
Present.
trustee Kessel. Here. Clerk Slater excused. Supervisor Lesperance,
Here.
trustee McDonald here.
And treasurer. We have
I'm sorry, we missed, and treasurer Corstange. Is that your name, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay, and treasurer Corstange, excuse me.
Article 3, approval of tonight's agenda.
Shipley makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
support.
The motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Kessel, to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Article 4, presentations. We have one presentation tonight from Dr. Robert Keys. He's going to be presenting on the Burton Park Deer Study. Dr. Keys is a professor of environmental biology and science educator at Cornerstone. He and his students conducted a deer count at Burton Park, which is the first step towards in any deer management plan before any plan would be enacted. Just want to note that Dr. Keys and his students did not charge the township or taxpayers any money for their work, but instead incorporate it into their curriculum. We want to thank Dr. Keys and also his students, and also our parks chair, Ms. Ginny Wani, for connecting the township with Dr. Keys. So on behalf of Cascade, welcome. And I don't know if half are here to hear you or might be split, but welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening. You've already introduced me, so I just took the first sentence off my talk here. First, I'd like to thank Supervisor Lesperance and Ben Swayze and Parks Committee Chairman Ginny Wanty for inviting us to participate in this project to study the white-tailed deer at Burton Park. This study was initiated, I'm told, in response to some township residents' concern about deer in the park and loss of landscaping due to deer herbivory, which is not unusual. So to give you a little bit of a background, deer issues are not new. Deer populations continue to increase in many urban and suburban areas in Michigan, and Cascade Township is not unique in that regard. Many government agencies like yourselves would like to know how many deer they have in their parks. And as we began this study, I wanted to make it clear that it's really not possible to actually determine the population of deer in Burton Park. So as I approach a study of this nature, I begin by looking at the park in juxtaposition to the rest of the landscape around the park, because it's important to understand that Burton Park is not an island. It's part of a much larger landscape of forest corridors, wetlands, and other landscape mosaics, which extends from the park and beyond. And when you look at this mosaic, it extends even to Ada and possibly even to places like the Calvin University Ecosystem Preserve. So deer travel through this mosaic as they search for food, shelter, mates, water, and as such, we can take snapshots looking at deer moving through this landscape, of which Burton Park is a small part. but we cannot determine the actual number of deer residing in the park at any given time because of this flow that goes through the park. So given this understanding, we set out to determine an estimate of deer moving through the park over the fall and winter seasons, which is generally when most of these studies on deer numbers are conducted. So in preparation for this, my team built a grid map over Burton Park and then divided that grid into 4 parts. So we had 4 study areas within the park. Within each of those study areas, we picked one grid location on which we were to deploy our trail cameras. It's important for a study of this nature to have randomly selected sites rather than a site that seems to have high deer traffic, so we can get more accurate count and reduce counting bias and increase our accuracy as much as we can. So in these selected grids, what we do is we go in, we go to the center of that grid spot, we spiral outward until we reach a in-use deer trail. And then we deploy our camera at that spot to capture as many deer moving through that trail as possible. After the cameras are set, we choose 2-week periods in which we're going to study. So we randomly choose 2-week periods, one generally in the pre-rut period, which would be from beginning of September to mid-October. We choose another 2-week period somewhere in the period from mid-October to the beginning of December in that kind of rut period. And then we choose one more 2-week period in that post-rut period, which generally falls between beginning of December and the middle of January. So what we do during that time is after each 2-week period, we go out and we collect the data from the cameras. And then we begin to go through thousands of pictures, and there are thousands of pictures because they don't just capture animal movements, they capture tree movements. And so it's sorting through a lot of pictures. And then we look for bucks in those pictures. We use bucks because they're uniquely identifiable. And we can create a recognition file to look for them over and over again. So we can identify each unique buck in each capture time period, and then look for those overlaps between those different time periods. In essence, we're looking for unique bucks for each time period and the number of repeated bucks in other time periods. In ecology, we call this a mark recapture study, where each time we see a new buck, it is considered marked. And then every time we see it in another time period, it's a recapture of that same buck. So from this, we can build a model to assess the estimated number of bucks moving through the park. And then once we have an estimate of the number of bucks between each time period, then we can start to add in does to that. So generally, research in Michigan shows that there are around 3 to 5 does or young yearlings for each buck that exists in the population. This allows us to get an estimate of the deer moving through the park. But again, remember, this is not a population of deer in the park. This is an estimate of deer using the park at some point in time. So when we compared each of these time periods against each other, we derived an average number of bucks between time periods. So when we compared the pre-rut and the rut time periods and put it into the model, we ended up with about 13 bucks. When we did it again for the pre-rut and post-rut period, we ended up with 7 bucks. And then when we did that again for the rut and post-rut period, we ended up with 9 bucks. So we take all of these, we then add in the doe ratios, and we come to an estimate. So when we calculate in those doe to buck estimates, we end up with a potential average of deer on the low end of around 24 and on the upper end of around 48. So averaged out, it's about 39 deer that we're seeing moving through the park, plus or minus 10 deer. So there's a lot of variability in the numbers there. Again, emphasizing this is the number that we see moving through the park, not actually in the park at one given time. So what does that all mean? That's what everybody wants to know. Are there too many deer in Burton Park? Potentially. It's, again, a really hard thing to say because the numbers suggest that there is a large number of deer traveling through the park relative to the mosaic around the park. However, this is not saying there's not enough forage to support this number of deer. To determine this, we actually go and do other studies looking at food availability, how much browsing has occurred in the park, how much understory is in the park, and how far can we actually determine how far those deer are traveling place to place in here. And unfortunately for residents, in the eyes of deer, landscape plantings are part of the forage equation. So as deer move, Burton Park, in the map I gave you in the report, Burton Park is kind of the bottom of a corridor that goes out to the northwest and goes north towards Ada. So there's actually a continuous strips of land that can be used by deer to travel as far north as Ada and as far northwest as potentially Reed's Lake. In talking with a colleague at Calvin University's Ecosystem Preserve, who did another study just like ours on their ecosystem preserve, we actually think we may have some of the same bucks from Burton Park as are at the Calvin Ecosystem Preserve. So we're going to get together with that. We just found that out in the last week or so. So you can really see that a lot of this movement has taken place. There's deer crash data that shows spots where they cross through this matrix. One of those is at the intersection of Burton and Cascade Road. Over the last 5 years, the records show about 8 recorded car deer accidents in that area. Laraway Lake and Cascade Road is another crossing spot where they cross Cascade Road, and around 10 car deer accidents have happened there. And this is the data is for 2017 to 2021. So what do you do next? When we've done studies like this in the past, after looking at deer numbers, often a group is established for that organization to start to look at what you might determine as next steps. For instance, at Blandford Nature Center, this group included people like the local DNR wildlife biologist, who does more of the management piece of things. Staff from the Nature Center were involved, community stakeholders, especially those who live around the perimeter of the Nature Center were involved, and other interested groups. In their case, they had representatives from groups like Quality Deer Management to actually speak into the process. The key here is to look at the deer issue from multiple perspectives and to take time doing so. And time is really important. Taking time to do so and coming up with a reasonable plan, which most people can agree to. Not everyone will always agree to it, but you can get a lot of buy-in from most of the people. Moving too quickly, I've seen this multiple times in the past at other projects, not that I've done, but that I've been aware of. It creates issues. And it generally does not end up with the goals of, say, the township and what they want to accomplish. And it often ends up in negative publicity, which most of us really try to avoid. So unfortunately, solutions to deer issues are not easily attainable and require time, effort, and commitment to long range and long-term management. Deer can multiply rapidly. A lot of people don't realize this, but deer multiply. They can double their population in a year when they're stressed. And having someone who can lead those efforts in designing a management plan is important for you. As I looked at your agenda for tonight and talked with Ginny, I commend you on the consideration of hiring a Parks and Recreation Director. I know your candidate, Melanie Mannion, and I have worked together for years. In fact, the last project I did was with Melanie at Ottawa County Parks. So she knows these issues well. So again, I thank you and the staff, like Ben was very gracious in helping us set things up. It was an excellent opportunities for my two students, Jacob Beakey and Nan Fan, to practice and use their skills in real world situations. And you need young eyes to look through that many pictures of deer. So at this time, any questions that you might have?
Do you think our new Parks Director candidate would you be comfortable with her handling this issue?
Melanie is very aware of these issues, so she could put together a very good team. She's well networked in this community of professionals and could definitely put together a team that could look at this issue very, very well.
Blandford Nature Center did or does?
They did some management over the years, and I'm not aware of any current management that they're currently doing right now because of changes that have happened over the years.
Dr. Peace, are you familiar at all with our Peace Park out by on Grand River Avenue?
I have hiked it a couple
Oh,
times.
good.
Yes,
Thank you. Okay,
yes,
good.
definitely.
Just well, about 12 years ago, we allowed, based upon one of the clauses in the grant we got from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, to allow bow hunting for a limited period of time, a limited number of licenses on kind of a lottery draw. And this year we amended it based on a resident asking us to only allow, I can't remember, it's just bucks only or just does only. Whereas before we just had it, whatever the state allowed.
Right.
We allowed. So we limited it this year to, one gender only. And we thought, then we had other residents come and say, well, that made no sense. And just any comments on that? Do you think that would help the control of these if we just went back to just following the state guidelines in terms of buck and or doe hunting?
So based on the research that I know about in that kind of a situation, people like to get the bucks. But actually, if the management goal is controlling population, does are actually in many ways more important. And so bow hunting, that is what Blandford Nature Center used in very specific spots and very specific time periods. But generally you want to have a mixture, and that's why having a wildlife biologist on a team like this is really important, because they can bring a lot of those management pieces in on how to manage a deer population in a very good way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have you seen it done well where you balance, like everybody wants something, but then they don't want to pay more taxes? And then they want to watch the deer in someone else's yard, but they don't want them in their own yard. And then they, safety, kids, Burton Park is surrounded by residents.
Right.
And it's not a huge parcel for hunting, and there's no reasonable expectation by the public of hunting in that area. Have you seen a similar geographic area to Burton Park that did a form of management well and safely?
Yeah, I have not. Burton's Park is actually a fairly small park to do management in, and it's going to have to be, anything that's planned is going to have to be done very carefully.
Did you have something?
I do, but you can finish your question.
So I know we're at the early stages and we're not there yet, but have you heard potentially like a wounded veterans group or something, like to take the cost problem out of it, but also do it in a managed, safe way? Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but.
Actually, Blandford actually did that type of thing. And part of their hunt was all wounded veterans and handicapped hunters who were at very specific spots, so they couldn't roam around. They're in very low traffic areas. And that was part of their plan that was well received by the public. And I think that's why their plan did not have a lot of the negative publicity. Again, they took a year to put together their plan before they took any actions.
My question is just, I think the Parks Committee has talked about getting together, like putting together a forestry plan, like forestry management plan. And when you talk about like the high canopy, not a lot of browse throughout that park and the travel of the deer throughout, that will significantly impact the number of deer within that park if we do have a forestry management plan as well that needs to work with this deer management plan. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
the deer, generally management, it's not just deer management, it's an
It's like, yeah.
overall management of an entire parcel, not just for one specific species.
Right, so because once we get rid of some of the canopy, there's going to be more browse, which is going to attract more deer for the food. portion of it,
Potentially, it
potentially.
all depends on the browse that's there.
Right. So I just think when we talk about a parks director.
Oh,
I
we
think
needed it so bad for so long.
This
I
is
mean, this
something
is,
like the whole putting together all of those pieces, I think is really important to have somebody that understands that. And can look at all of those pieces to evaluate what fully needs to be done.
Yeah, actually Melanie wasn't involved in our first study that we did at Blandford, but she, as part of Ottawa County Parks, was actually at the first meeting I ever conducted because they were looking at Ottawa County Parks at that time. And we finally got to do a project for her last year.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Very
your
good.
time.
Thank
and
you
your
very
hard
much.
work.
And I've already told Ben that if a group is put together, he asked me if I would be a part of it. And I've already said, yes, I would be willing to sit on any group like that too.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much.
Article 5, public comments. Now is the time to comment on anything on tonight's agenda. Please limit or not scheduled for public hearing. So we want to note that the Snow Avenue paving issue does have a separate public hearing session. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. State your name and address for record keeping. Welcome. Mr. Hughes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good evening. Point of order, I do have some comments, not so much on Dr. Key's presentation, but more about what is going to be the next step and how we go about doing it. I'd like to reserve that for the latter public comment. Is that permissible?
Absolutely.
Okay. The question I have actually is for Dr. Keys. I read, thank you so much for adding those deer management plans. I had already read several of them. And I'd also read the Meridian Township. My understanding, I think that corroborates what you said, and that is that deer management can't be focused on ducks, on ducks, obviously, not bucks, but has to be focused on the does. That is what management requires. And so it seems to me that we've got to be looking at what the doe population is. And when I've looked at all these management plans, they all have ascertained what is the estimated population of the does, because they can only then figure out how many do they eliminate to get back into ecological balance. So it seems to me, and I'm relying on your expertise now, are there other methods that can be incorporated other than just the methodology that you use to actually get an accurate determination of at least the doe population in this area? And I want to qualify that as well. As I understand, and I was looking at DNR study down in the lower part of the lower peninsula, does are not migratory. Now, it makes sense that bucks may be moving up and down this corridor because they're looking for does. But does, for the most part, stay within a relatively concentrated area. I understand maybe even as small as 8 or 9 acres, as long as the forage is sufficient. So those are the two questions I have. Is there a way of more accurately determining what the doe population is so we can understand what type of management is needed? And number two, am I correct that really does do stay within a relatively limited area as opposed to bucks who may be wandering up and down this corridor? Thank you.
Do you want them? Thank you, Dr. Keyes.
So thank you for your questions. And is there a more accurate? There are some much more intensive means of counting does. But they're not in my ability to do so. And a lot of those actually involve actual capture. So that's a little bit more difficult to do. So oftentimes it's does estimated rather than actual does counted. While I think in some respects, does can stay in a smaller area, most of, and that's when they're in a much more urban setting, as long as there's food. What I understand is about 3.8 square kilometers per doe is what some of the research says.
They do
So-
tend to group together though.
They-
With the offspring.
So yeah, it's kind of an interesting. If you've ever seen those little balls that kind of spring in and out, this is what doe do during their year, is they generally tend to come together during the winter months and then they spread outward as they start to fawn outward just because of foraging. Oh, yes. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, Jeff.
Yeah.
So that's the best I can give you right now. I'm not a manager. I'm a landscape ecologist. So the movement part is what I do, not the management actually. And that's why having a DNR wildlife biologist on a group that determines a management plan is really important.
Thank you. Mr. Rowland, welcome.
Brian, can you turn on the video camera? Please.
Yeah.
I got it, Brian. Alan Rowland, 1829 Linson Court. I am also a member of the Planning Commission. Brian, is it? Can I? There's going to be a proposal that's going to be coming to you here that I want to make you guys aware of. Rezoning some of the land out by the airport from potential light industrial back to agricultural.
Mr. Rowland, I just want to clarify, it's already zoned agriculture.
Yeah.
This is talking about a
Future plan. Yep.
and there's nothing binding on that. That's not a zoning. That is a planning document that references future intent.
Future intent.
So it
Right.
is zoned agricultural.
Right.
Okay.
So this proposal is coming to you from the Planning Commission and it barely passed 5-4. Okay. And the reason for that is the proposal that's coming, and forgive the lines, I did the best I could with the map. I've got another one that shows a little better. The proposal that's coming to you is saying that the property up to Thornapple River Drive should be go back to, in the future planned, back to agricultural. The 4 people that voted no wanted that extended all the way to craft. And the reason for that is that I think we can all foresee somebody putting a gas station right there on the 36th Street exit. And I don't think any resident in Cascade is going to want a gas station on the 36th Street exit. I think the airport has shown that they're not a friend of Cascade with the PFAS issue. The developer was rather confrontational through all meetings that they attended. So they are obviously not a friend of Cascade. And I would ask you, the board, to do one of 2 things, and that would either make the decision to extend it to craft or to push it back to the Planning Commission with the a suggestion that we re-suggest to you with it pushed back to craft. So I just want to make you aware of that suggestion. I don't know if it's coming on this meeting or future meetings, but be aware of it when it comes up. And when that's being presented, I'll probably come here again, because I think it's important that we send the clear message right now, like we don't want a gas station there. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you.
I watched that meeting and I was counting the votes and very curious about where you were at on that. So
I said no.
thanks for making my,
Yeah. Thank you.
thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Mark Eastberg, live at 6985 Oak Brook, which is property that borders Burton Park. So we've lived there about 25 years. And so we've seen changes over the years to the deer population and perhaps some of the result of that as well. When we first moved in, our 5 kids would be delighted when they would spot a deer in the distance up on the hill behind our house. It was kind of a rare occurrence and a lot of exciting moments there. What we've seen is really some pretty dramatic changes from our perspective. We've seen deer visits to the yard, to the back of the hill, and really to the neighborhood. It has increased dramatically. It's very common to see deer along the side of the road off Shagbark and Oak Brook, sometimes jumping out in front of us. It's common to see the deer nesting on our lawn in the middle of the night, small groups and herds, something that even 10 years ago we would have never seen. So just anecdotally, we've seen a dramatic increase. We've also seen changes in the undergrowth. It used to be that families would go pick blackberries in that area. I don't know where there's any blackberry bushes now, and I know that's one of the plants that deer eat. We've also seen changes in our neighborhood. A turnover, young families, it's great, little kids. That's a concern because obviously young families driving through the neighborhood, the chance for increased deer encounters, but also changes in behavior from the deer, much bolder. Used to be when the deer would spot you, they'd run away, but now they might just stroll 10 yards away and look at you. And there's even been sort of some showdowns between pets in the area and deer. So I feel like as a citizen of Cascade, we have an obligation to steward that park well. The park is a terrific resource for our community. And just as if a tree would fall on the road in that park, we would clear it out. And if there was a disease going through the oak trees, we take care of it. And so I see maintaining a healthy herd in Burton Park as part of our stewardship as a township. And so I support and applaud any effort that you do to come up with a management plan that as many people as possible, as the professor said, can agree to. So it's a privilege to live next to the park, privilege to be part of Cascade. And I'm hopeful that we can find a win-win for the citizens and the deer population that could be very stressed if they're overpopulated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, just Mr. Van Solkema, welcome.
Can I have the camera, please?
Yep, just a minute.
Scott Van Salkma, 2570 Orange. I'm also here about the deer. So this photo was taken on November 7th last year at 1:30 in the afternoon. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Another one right there in my backyard. Deer. Just hanging out. Last night when I was walking my dog along Orange, there were 4 deer on the left heading down towards a Peace Street, and then 3 more in the pet cemetery. And then this is what they leave in my yard. This is just on one side of my yard. I pick up more deer feces than I do dog feces. And not only do they
You have a
leave
small
that,
dog, but-
yeah, I have a small dog, but this is in 24 hours. Like I cleaned it up one day and then the next day I'm out there picking up that again. So it's not just that, but they also, the deer ticks that carry Lyme disease. I know Dr. Keys said that, take time, and that Blanchard Nature Center took a year to do something, but this has been an ongoing problem. It needs to be fairly quickly. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned about hunting or or this or that, or, I mean, is there any way that private citizens can do anything on their own property? Besides not just using weapons? I don't know if there's poison available. Again, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. I don't know these things. I'm just
You're
offering
asking me.
suggestions. I'm just offering suggestions, something that could be there,
My
if there's a
brother
certain
is the
amount.
one to ask, not me.
Yeah, I mean, if there's, trank dart, because any places, I know the DNR or who have you, moving the deer is not a possibility of capturing and moving that. We don't want to do that. And then I read in the Ann Arbor study that they tried doing sterilization, and then that doesn't really work. And I can't imagine that's extremely cost effective for hysterectomies or what's the other term?
Yeah, we got it.
So, but yeah, we don't want to do that, but we need, I hope that we can get this done hopefully quickly. I mean, it's starting to be the warmer months, the landscaping's coming back out again. People put out their flowers, their new plants, and then they just get mowed down in a week. So if we can do something sooner than later, that would be my vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth Thompson, 7261 Red Bud Lane. And they've pretty much reiterated what I was going to say too, so I'll just kind of gloss over what I had. I'll email the rest of you. But as far as the droppings, yeah, our lawn is it's littered. And the deer we've been here about 21 years now. And we have noticed, just continuously increasing damage. They're literally now decimating our ground covers, which they never did before. I have a small ornamental tree in the front yard that we are actually going to have to build a barrier around because, even though I spray, they still eat it. My neighbors and I have continued spraying, and now I spray literally every other day. It used to be every 2 weeks. So they are looking for anything and everything to eat. They're eating plant species that they never ate before. We found a carcass, not this past winter, but the winter before, on our property line that obviously had starved to death. There was no evidence that it had been hit. It just literally starved to death. And you can tell that there's just not enough food anymore. We have a group of white pines that have been eaten up to the browse line. I mean, they're eating everything. So it really is a serious problem.
How long have you lived at that address?
About 21 years now. And I have counted up to 17 deer in my neighbor's yard in the fall when the cherries are dropping. And, we have booted out 5 to 7 deer out of our front yard bedding down at night. So it's difficult. And I set up a trail cam on my property and, they're jumping my fence now and decimating the backyard, which never was bothered before. So yeah, it's become a huge problem. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodman, welcome.
Hi, Bruce Goodman, 7726 Kirkwall. I came here initially tonight to complain that we haven't seen our daylilies in about 10 years. As soon as they're there, they're like the dessert for the deer. So it's very troublesome. We spent hundreds of dollars in our landscaping expenses. But Dr. Keys reminded me of something else, and that is I won't drive Cascade Road anymore. I haven't for 10 years. I figure going 55 miles an hour through that deer infested area is dangerous to me and other motorists and all. So I would just encourage you to do something about the deer management, especially on Cascade Road. I also drive about 30 miles an hour on Buttrick for the same reason. So it's throughout the township that we have this problem. So thank you for addressing this.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Vanover. I live at 7114 Windcrest. So top of our street is the Cascade Burton Park. My wife and our 3 kids have lived there for 11 years now. We've had a lot of good memories, really enjoyed having that expanded backyard. up the road, but same thing as the neighbors have said, but I want to put a little color on what Mr. Goodman just shared. In the last 3 years, we have had 2 total losses of our vehicles on Cascade Road, right there, Cascade and Laraway Lake. One was at 10 o'clock at night. That was my car. I can understand that. The other one was 10 o'clock in the morning on May 31st. That was my wife's minivan. That makes no sense to me, how a deer hit her in the middle of a almost summer day. So that was costly to us to receive a relatively small check and have to buy a new car. Our children, at least my daughter, has not appreciated seeing signs of, be careful, don't approach the deer. That is anxiety producing for her. And I've noticed that in our 11 years, development in the park has continued. Those 2 new residences have gone up in there. So seems like the problem is getting worse as we're taking away more of the natural vegetation. And I too view this as a matter of stewardship. We've developed our land, and I appreciate you guys and previous commissions and leaders who've made good decisions. I love living in Cascade. I think it's a wonderful place to live. So certainly we've created this problem, so let's address it. And I don't want deer starving or suffering or chronically wasting or anything like that. So I would encourage you all to take action before things get too worse than they already are. So thanks for making open comments tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully the local deer population isn't paying attention to or they're scared and they move. That's true. Any other comments? Oh, yep.
Jana Kruger, 7726 Kirkwall, Bruce Goodman's wife. And I have some different issues, and of course, the same ones, although I do drive on Cascade Road. Buttrick to me is scarier because I can't go down Buttrick at night without, crawling, because I know that our herd of deer is going to cross in front of me. We've lived here in Cascade for 36 years in the same house in Cascade Highlands. So we're on the other side of the Thornapple from the study that was done. And I would say, as one other resident did, it's been the last 10 years as more land has been developed. And when they did the golf course over there, whatever it's called, Quail Ridge, that, deprived a number of deer of their homes, and they roam into our yards. We've had dead, not in our yard, but the yard in back of us, just dead fawns found in the swimming pools because, they drown, they don't realize they get in there and drown. And we started out with just like one every once in a while. And we have a doe that comes to our backyard every spring and has twins. So the herd is, 6 before some of the older ones take off. So we've got 6 deer all the time. I agree. They're extraordinarily bold. You have to get about 10 feet from them, waving your hands and screaming and at them before they even move. And they move 10 feet away, and then they turn around and they look at you. So, again, with the Lyme's disease and chronic wasting, it's just not a good situation. We can't put in any plants in our yard anymore. We had our daughter's wedding a couple of years ago in the backyard. We planted a bunch of in bloom roses, and in a week they were devastated by the deer. They not only ate the flowers, they ate them down to the ground. So I just want to mention those things. And let's see. And I just also want to say, I personally know of 2 people who have people in their neighborhood who feed the deer. And I don't think they're supposed to be doing that, but there's nobody going around telling them not, to clean it up. So we're just enabling this problem.
Thank you.
If I could have the camera on for a second. Where is it? Is it up here or down here?
It's on the table there, if you just give me a second.
Okay. Oh, right there, over here. Okay, hi, Betty Belding,
I live at 2696 Orange Avenue. We've been there for 32 years this May. And I just wanted to show you, this is a little different problem. That is my 16-pound dog, who the deer about probably, what would you say, 250 pounds? Oh, 250 to 300-pound buck. And the 16-pound dog, the dog was doing his job of trying to protect our yard. And the deer was doing his job of trying to protect his 5 does down the hill. Not 4, not 3, there were 5. And I had to go out there and scare the deer away. My husband was taking this picture through the dining room window. So they come right up into our yard. They come to our bird bath. They come to our bird feeders. They have, the last time I've seen a daylily is probably 20 years ago. And it's been a huge increase from when we moved in. So they're not only a danger to the cars and to the drivers, they're a danger to our pets as well, because the deer will think it's a coyote and they will kick and kill if they can. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Also, we had a doe who's been birthing twins. Last year, she never regained any body fat because there's not enough food. She was trying to eat my rhubarb, which is poisonous to them. I haven't had a hosta in my yard for at least the last 6 years, 7 years probably, because they, as soon as they come up, they're eating them. They just don't have enough food to support them.
But that doesn't mean feed them.
Exactly. I don't feed them, but I do know that we have a neighbor that
Right.
does.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Paul Pietrowski. I live at 2586 Orange Court. I'm same neighborhood as the buildings, the Sokopus. This picture was, you can see it March 9th. I had to do a panoramic. Virtually every day, there's 6 doe in my backyard grazing on the back hill. Quite often there is a dozen. I don't know if you can see this. Where am I going here? There's, darn it. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot. I have a million pictures. So there's 11 doe in my neighbor's yard and my yard. There's 4 here in my neighbor's yard, which I don't know if you can see. 4 there. I had to take panoramic to get them all. And then on my back hill, there's a couple more there, 3 of them. And then right over here on my back hill, there's another 4, so that's 11. It's not uncommon to see up to a dozen doe at any time. I know there's a couple 8 points that are running around. A couple of months ago, for the first time, I've seen 4 young buck. There was 4 doe being followed by 4 young buck, a 6 point, 2 4 points, and a spike. So we're going to start seeing a lot more deer in this, and this is just in our little bowl behind the folding warehouse. It's just where we live. I know we're going to move at the speed of government, so it'll probably be a couple of years. I'd like to see if private property hunting permits issued, crossbow, compound bow. They're not deadly, very deadly. They're 30 to 50 yards. As you can see from my property, I have a perfect backstop because there's a gigantic hill berm. People want to come over and you shoot off my deck. You can shoot off my deck because you can get 20 feet from these deer. They don't care. I walk on my deck. They see me. They may move, but they don't really usually.
Manager Swayze, this is can we just go over the, how the state, we operate under the state, regular DNR, right?
So that's what I wanted to comment on. The township doesn't actually have any hunting regulations. So as long as you can get a permit from the state to hunt and you hunt within their rules and regulations, you're able to do whatever you need to do.
Okay.
So what is the state regulations as far as like a certain number of feet from a home or?
With a gun, it's 400 to 500 feet or yards, something from, that's what. But that's with a gun. With a bow or a crossbow, you're a range of 30 to 50 yards. 50 yards maximum with a crossbow or a compound bow. So it's quite a short distance, and I could easily, like, I have pictures of them 12 feet from in my front yard. They're domesticated animals at this point. They really don't care that you're there. They just kind of go about their business.
Thank you. And then did we ever, I can't remember if we publicly talked about the results of the deer hunt at Peace Park, did we?
We did, yeah, we talked about them. There were no deer taken this year.
So we tripled the amount of permits issued. Is that right?
So we tripled the amount of permits available, but I think we only gave out 28 or 29 of them.
So they were not all taken advantage of.
Correct. And a lot of the people that did take advantage of them didn't actually go out and hunt either.
Okay.
The feedback that we got was that it's a difficult terrain environment to hunt if they can only pull does.
And a lot of walking traffic, right? Which is good because people are using the park, but. Ms. Wani? This is our.
There was one taken. And left for dead with the bow and the arrow.
At Peace Park?
At Peace Park, it might be in-
Oh, so it was found with an arrow in it?
Yeah, and then.
Sorry, and then the grounds and maintenance removed it. And I don't know why they didn't take it, but they left it. Maybe they were tired of walking the hills. I don't know.
So we don't know if that got counted or not.
Yeah. So there's some other, and then my understanding from the building and grounds, there's kind of some neighbors on the Bolt side that kind of do their own thing, shall we say? So I don't know if they're actually taking permits, but there's some deer being taken.
Thank you.
Hello, Brian Turner, Orange Avenue, like a handful of neighbors here. I just want to share a little bit of the history. We've been in the house for about 9 years. I'm a hunter myself. There's a lot of really nice deer that I'm not allowed to take because of our neighborhood association's bylaws.
Okay.
Totally understand that technically the state and the township would say we could, but bylaws say can't do that. Otherwise, probably would have helped out the problem. So what I can say for ourselves is we've spent thousands of dollars buying plants that are supposedly deer resistant. There are no deer resistant plants, even the ones that like guarantee it in our neighborhood, everything gets decimated. We've spent hundreds of dollars on sprays. Some of our people have said that they're spraying all the time. None of it works anymore. Initially, we moved in 9 years ago. It did. Can't find anything to keep the deer from eating our plants, even the ones that are supposed to be not attractive to it. We had the deer eat our pumpkins for Halloween before Halloween off our porch. They literally came on our front deck.
Wow.
I had that.
They are not afraid of people. Multiple people have said this. We've walked up to the deer within this close and they'll stomp their feet and grunt at you. Not afraid to charge likely. We have small children, so that's a concern for us as well. Deer feces was mentioned. We have feces on our porch from deer. So dogs, kids, and we have a 2-year-old, they pick up stuff like disease carrying, and it's just a concern that we have. And there's just nothing that we can do about it in our neighborhood specifically. We found a carcass a couple years ago across the street from us. There's a woods that's owned by this pet cemetery. Again, emaciated deer that starved to death. And
Has
that's,
anyone checked if that pet cemetery allows hunting?
I may have asked them if I could hunt on their property and they said absolutely not.
Oh,
So, yeah, so that's our history with it. We'd love to try to help as a hunter. I'm a bow hunter. And to the comment about a deer without an arrow, sometimes you don't find your deer. I don't think a hunter purposefully left a deer to die. That's super like most hunters dread that happening. It almost happened to me a couple of years ago. And I tracked the deer for a mile across the river. I don't want to see a deer suffer. Most hunters don't want to. The last thing I would say is there's a program, Sportsmen's Against Hunger, that the DNR associates with. We could give all this meat to homeless shelters and help feed people. It'd be a great thing for the community to show how we're giving back as well. So
thank you.
If any of our Zoom participants would like to participate in this public comment, please limit your time to 3 minutes. It has to be something that's on the agenda except for what is out for public hearing. Please raise your hand. Supervisor will wait a moment.
Okay.
Supervisor, no one would like to speak.
Okay. Article 6, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion or discussion?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Kessel to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have no financial actions or unfinished business this evening, which brings us to Article 9, new business. First, item 030-2023. Resolution to distribute draft amended master plan and to assert Township Board's right to adopt master plan. And this is concerning amending the master plan's future use land map, I believe. Welcome, Director Hilbrands.
Great, thank you. So included in your packet is a resolution for consideration and map showing proposed amendments to the future land use map, which is part of the township's master plan. With the Township Board's direction, the Planning Commission has been reviewing the land use of the area located between the airport and M6. The proposed amendments would change the future land use designation from industrial to rural residential for an area located between the airport and M6, which extends north to the point where Thornapple River Drive crosses I-96 and south to approximately where 60th Street crosses M6. And then shown on the map there included in your packet. So the Planning Commission reviewed the proposed amendments at the March 20 meeting, and after discussion recommended that they be approved for distribution by a 5-4 vote. If the board approves of the proposed amendments, then you may adopt the attached resolution, which would allow the amended master plan to be distributed and begin the required review period. As part of the review period, a notice will be sent out to a number of entities as required by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, and these entities will have 42 days to provide comments. After that 42-day review period, the Planning Commission will then hold a public hearing, after which they may adopt the amended master plan and send it back to the Township Board for final approval. The attached resolution provides the board with the authority to approve that final master plan, which is the same process the township has used for the review of previous master plans as well. So at this time, the Township Board is being requested to approve the distribution of the proposed master plan amendment.
Thank you. Questions, discussions?
Brian, does that include the area that one planning commissioner talked about tonight?
It does not include that. So that extends further west than what the Planning Commission had recommended with their 5-4 vote.
And he was suggesting that he would like an opportunity for us to consider that or send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration.
Yeah, that's at the Township Board's discretion if you want to adjust this and send it out for, again, and this is just for sending it out for review and comments. So it still goes back to the Planning Commission for final adoption and review back to the
And we
Township
can do
Board.
that at that time.
Yes, that's my understanding is you can take in comments and make revisions then at that time.
Final approval, does it go with the Planning Commission after board process wise? Does it end with the?
It ends with it's adopting this resolution gives the board that final approval. So it's required by statute, go to the Planning Commission for that public hearing, and then the board has the right to approve that final plan, which you would be doing by adopting this resolution tonight. So it would go back to the board for final approval then.
Does the board have the discretion at that time with the master plan statutorily to make changes without it going back to the Planning Commission?
For that final step, I would check with legal counsel on that, whether they can do that or if would have to revert back to the Planning Commission.
I think they can, because the reason why I asked the question is I was on the Planning Commission once when we put a lot of work into the plan and it went to the board and the board just adopted it anyway. And the planning commissioners felt it would have been a better idea if they sent it back to us and let us discuss it a little more and come up with the final resolution and then go back to the board. So Grace, I think they can.
Was that for actual master plan language or was that like a development issue?
It was a rezoning and a development issue.
Oh, so this would be different because there's specific statutory steps for the master plan.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that.
But this is more of a process where this is part of the process.
Correct. Yeah.
This issue has been exhaustively analyzed and discussed in detail, publicly and transparently for months. So I think it's time to bring it to a definitive conclusion and move on. You've done a very good job as well as the Planning Commission.
Make
Further
a motion
discussion?
that the resolution to discharge or distribute the draft, the amended master plan to assist Township board's right to adopt be approved.
Support.
The resolution by trustee Kessel, supported by treasurer Corstange, to approve the resolution to distribute the draft amended master plan and to assert township board's right to adopt the master plan. Trustee McDonald, please call the roll.
Yep, roll call vote. Trustee Shipley.
Yay.
Trustee Kessel.
Yes.
Trustee Nordick. Yes. Clerk Fleer is excused. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes,
Treasurer Corstange.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald. Yes.
motion carried. Oh, did I miss?
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Hilbrands. Next item 031-2023, and this has to do with the Snow Avenue reconstruction project. I see we're very lucky to have members of the road commission here tonight, and I don't know if Manager Swayze, if there's.
So they're going to give a presentation, but if I can just give a little bit of background.
Sure, I just didn't know if that'd probably be good before the public hearing part or, okay.
Yep.
Certainly before deliberation.
Yeah, so in 2020, just before the pandemic, the township received a petition request from residents living along the gravel portion of Snow Avenue from 52nd Street to 60th Street, which that entire stretch is approximately 1 mile, to conduct preliminary engineering on paving this portion of the road. So after talking to the petition circulator, Mr. Dale Vanderschaft, the request was in response to the poor condition of the road in the late winter, early spring, and the general desire to have the road paved. So in the summer of 2022, the Township Board approved a work order to conduct a survey and develop preliminary engineering for paving on this section of Snow Avenue. So by approving that work order, the Road Commission developed plans significant enough to give the township a reliable cost estimate for paving the road and a survey to understand what the cross-section of the road, including any tree removals, might look like. It should be noted that being a boundary road, there's a shared responsibility on this road between Lowell Township and Cascade Township. Cascade Township is responsible for the south half of the road, while Lowell Township is responsible for the north half of the road. Jerry Hale, the township supervisor for Lowell Townships, indicated they do not have the funding to participate in the paving project. However, the Road Commission has indicated that Cascade could move forward paving our section of responsibility if we so choose. So now that the survey and cost estimate are available, they are being presented to the Township Board to review and determine the necessity for the project, as well as the recommended cost sharing, if any, of the township's 55% obligation for the project. The Kent County Road Commission covers 45% of the cost of the project. Those determinations will then be shared with the petitioners who must sign another petition before construction is considered by the board. The township has a policy dictating that it'll look favorably upon projects where residents are willing to commit to the project, but has not set a dollar or percentage amount. The last two projects in the township where roads were converted from gravel to asphalt, the residents did provide between 30% and 35% of the local match. The road commission's here tonight. They've completed the preliminary engineering and cost estimates. And I think at this point, it would be a good opportunity to invite them up before we talk about what the potential financial options are.
Welcome, thank you.
Okay, hold on just a second. I'll get your screen up.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for inviting us. The Road Commission and Cascade Township have a long history of shared projects on both paving projects and improvements on your existing pavement. So we do have a long history together. As Ben said, this started a couple of years ago with the township coming to us, ask us to put together some plans, and that's what that's what we've done. So I just want to walk through kind of how this process works, because it really starts at the township level. The township drives our local road improvements, but ultimately it's the Road Commission Board that will approve or disapprove of the project. Okay, but the township has to take the first step and commit financially. So, oops, too fast. Okay. We did have an informational meeting with the residents in February of 23. And at that point, all the residents that attended were in favor of the project. The ones that, as I said, the ones that attended were in favor of the project. Okay. So the residents, they request the improvement. We've done an aerial survey and we've done preliminary design work. And that really establishes a grade line
and the center line of the road. A little bit about the township agreement, because you wonder why half and half, why half Lowell, why half Cascade, okay?
And how you choose it.
Well, that was chose in the thirties, okay? And what I can tell you is, we may question it today, but it's in the thirties, it made sense to somebody, okay? And it has worked on a statewide basis. How exactly it happened and why, I can't answer that question because I'm old, but not that old. Okay, if you
No one's
look at the map, okay, the green highlighted areas are the ones that Cascade is responsible for, and those are for construction responsibilities.
Oh, these are on the township line.
Those are the township borderlines, okay? Go back to that. Okay, those are the borderline roads that are shared with your bordering townships. Okay, and again, we put together a preliminary design. These are not final plans. If we are going to go through with this and the township signs a work order, we still can do a little bit of tweaking, but the idea is we put the road back on section line. Gravel roads, non-paved roads typically took the path of least resistance over the past 50, 60, 70 years. When we pave it, we put it back in the center. So again, your property generally is to the center of the road. That's the section line. So we take a fair amount from each side. Nobody suffers that. It's based on the center line, based on your survey. Okay. As Manager Swayze said, the way it works with the road commission, 55% of local road construction is paid by the township, 45% is covered by the road commission. The estimate for this project currently is a half a mile long and $660,000. That's $363 for the township, $297 for the road commission. Now, these are estimates. We're going through times with increased prices consistently. Just since we had the informational meeting, we raised that estimate by about $60,000 because we're seeing asphalt prices 5 to 6% up from last year. We anticipate if this is approved, we need to have a little cushion for the following year. We don't intend prices to go down at this point. Again, if approved at the township level, we would ask the township board to sign a work order committing to the project. We would then schedule a public hearing. Okay, that hearing again is with the road commission. The road commission has the final authority to say yes or no to the project. If that's the case, we'll do final design work. We'll do permit requirements, accusations, or excuse me, to gain permits from the DEQ where we need them. Okay. If we get that, if our board holds a public hearing and our board approves it, the construction phase would start. That would be notifications of the residents, tree removal, resetting mailboxes, do drainage improvements, do grade improvements to get better sight lines. We'll put a sand subbase underneath the road and put 3 inches of asphalt and come back and restore it. Okay. One question that consistently comes up is speed limits. Okay. Speed limits currently are set by the Michigan State Police. It's on the principle of the 85th percentile. Simply put, the philosophy is 85% of us as motorists drive what's reasonable and prudent and safe. Most of us, as we drive a road, don't know what the posted speed is. We adjust our speed based on the surroundings. That's the philosophy behind it. The theory is you want a consistent speed. You don't want some people driving 30 and some people driving 60. You want a consistent speed so you don't have passing movements. Passing movements are generally where people make poor choices and we have problems. So the 85th percentile, what would happen if the road is paved a year or so after it's paved, when people get used to it, we'll do a speed study and determine a speed limit. I will say in my 40+ years at the road commission, generally speaking, rural roads like this will stay 55 non-posted statutory. Okay. What people drive may be different than that, but the idea is that you want a consistent speed.
So if we took everyone complains about Cascade Road, how come we can't slow down Cascade Road, just change the speed limit? Say we changed it to 35, just numbers on a sign, would that fix our problem?
Absolutely not.
One, we can't do it, right? No, we can't.
You know, the township cannot, again, statute set by the state police will correct the problem. That answer is no. Okay. Because again, 85% of the people drive what they feel is reasonable and prudent, not knowing what the posted speed is. if you can set enough police officers out there to write tickets, generally the connection between the wallet and the purse and the brain, if you ticket people enough and they're fine long enough, you may be able to slow people down, but normally that doesn't happen. People drive what they feel is reasonable, prudent.
Can we set up the patrol to happen at the time and location of where they're doing the speed study?
It's not marked, okay? When we do a speed study, we're gonna do it generally in today's time with electronics, with radar. There's not gonna be a police officer there. We're gonna set it so nobody knows their speed is being taken. Because I will tell you from my time setting speed limits, people generally want the speed slower in front of their house.
But not anywhere else.
Thank you. Okay, and I will tell you some of the speed studies that we've done where we dropped the speed limit. Some of the petitioners were the first ones that were ticketed away from their house. Again, we drive what's reasonable and prudent. I would challenge anybody as they drive the road to know what the speed is in their head. Most people don't. Okay. Speed limits are very touchy because again, we want them slower in front of our house, but generally we don't drive slower someplace else.
I have a question. Yeah, and possibly from Ben. I just want a clarifying question, just being new.
Yeah.
I think I understand that Cascade Township is responsible for this portion of the road. So if it decides to be paved, it's the whole road that will be paved. It's not like half of it, or is it just half the Cascade side?
It would be the entire width of the road, but it would
Only-
be half the distance. So it would be from 60th Street a half a mile north.
Have you done that before?
That's what I couldn't figure out from the map, but it was very small, so I couldn't quite figure that
Right.
piece out.
No, and I should have clarified that half of a mile of road full width.
Okay,
Okay.
so the request right now or the discussion is about 1 mile of road, or how many miles?
Right now, the
Half.
discussion is one half from 60th Street, a half a mile north, which is a portion that is Cascade's responsibility.
Okay, because okay. I
No.
thought okay,
That's what we've been asked to look at right now, because in conversations with Lowell Township, they do not have the funding to pay for the north half, if you will, or from 52nd south.
That's the part I think I'm kind of confused on, because the wording talks about Snow Avenue between 52nd Street to 60th Street, and that's where it's confusing. So it's only a half a mile, the
Correct.
southern half of that mile of road.
That's what we're talking about right now. Now, we have done some plan work on the entire mile because we flew it. We did some preliminary design work because at that point in the discussion, we weren't sure where Lowell was at. Nothing would stop Cascade.
We
Okay.
would.
But let me rephrase that, okay? The road commission would not stop Cascade from paying for the entire mile, 55% of the entire mile. That's a Cascade Township decision. We deal with 21 townships, so we deal with 21 different ways of doing business. Nothing stops the road commission from saying a township can't just because they don't have the responsibility.
Okay, and then my other question is about the informational sessions that were
Okay.
held for residents. Just looking at the PowerPoint presentation for the informational session versus the recommendation and information in our packet towards the board members. How clear was it to residents with the potential for the amounts they may have to pay if this moves forward, if it's decided that they're going to pay a portion? Was that discussed at the informational sessions? And if so, were specific dollar amounts told to residents of what they may be responsible for?
Yeah, no, so no specific dollar amounts were told. They were basically told that it's up to the township board to decide where the local funding comes from.
Okay.
So the township board gets to decide if they want to pay for all of it. The township board gets to decide if they want to pay for none of it and tell the residents that if they want it, they have to pay for all of it.
Right, I understand that, but I don't think it's fair to the residents that we're having a public meeting right now, public session for them to discuss it, when if I lived on that section of road and you came to me and said, I don't even know, there's 4 people that live on this section of road and it's gonna be $200 and some thousand, and you guys are all responsible for it. My view on what I would want to stand up and speak about here is completely different than my view would be if I looked at the PowerPoint of the presentation. So let's say I didn't go to the meeting, but there's a PowerPoint. That PowerPoint specifically says township responsibility. There's no disclaimer in there to state that the residents might be responsible for up to 100% of that. And I don't feel it's fair that we're having a public hearing about this right now for them to voice their concerns when we haven't gotten a recommendation based on past precedents, or a recommendation from anybody on how this should be handled and how this should be paid for. I don't think it's fair to any of the residents, whether you're for it or against it. I don't think it's fair.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is part of that process, right? So this is an opportunity for us as staff to hear how the township thinks about it. It's an opportunity for the residents to come to you and talk to how about you feel about it. There's another step in the process, right? So once you guys make a decision, so say tonight you'd say, okay, we would support this project, but the township would only support it if the residents were willing to pay 25% of the cost of the project. Then the petitioner is responsible for going back to the residents and saying, okay, the township board has told us that they're willing to pay for 25%. Do you still support this project? And if they get a petition that only has, 35% of the people in the area, that comes back to the township board and you get to make a decision based on that. So this is a public hearing for you guys to get that information from the residents. You may get somebody that stands up and says, I absolutely support this project, no matter what I have to pay. There's some people that say, I won't support this project at all, even if we don't have to pay anything. It's an opportunity for you guys to hear for them as that's being.
Okay,
debated.
another question then, when we talk about the petition, is that the people that only live on the section of road that we're gonna pay for, or is it the whole mile that we keep talking about?
Oh, good question.
Just the section in the project area.
But within that half a mile. So how many total residents are there
There's 15 spots, but
in that half a mile?
there's 15,
Cascade residents on the half that we would be,
but there's not 15 residents. So 2 of those parcels
15.
don't have any houses.
So 15 parcels within that half mile, both sides of the street,
but they're taxed. So who do we count? Do we count houses or parcels?
or road frontage, or, I mean, there's.
So it depends on how you look at it, right? So
Well, how should we look at it?
so the case law shows that if you're considering a special assessment district, you should treat them as parcels. Because the special assessment has to be, those parcels are receiving equal benefit. So the special assessments would be the same whether you have a house on it or not. If you're not considering a special assessment, if you're just considering, hey, how many people support this? Those people that don't live there still may have an opinion about whether or not they, just because they don't live there doesn't mean they're not a property owner.
Right, well, and that was another part of my question. Does it take into consideration potential splits? Because in theory, if I owned 20 acres, I'm a single owner, I could potentially, once that road's paved, split my lots to sell them off because they're potentially worth more being on a paved street.
Correct.
So, but that doesn't take that into consideration. It's just. Okay.
So the 15 is what? 1/2 of the mile on the only frontage that's paved on the Cascade side?
Or both sides.
Both sides.
So, and we're talking for the purposes of the petition, right? So
It's the same process.
I know, but half of it's Lowell. That's the only reason I'm confused. I don't mean to cut, sorry, trustee Shipley, I don't. No, we gotta watch it because this is a contentious subject. Nope, not mad, just don't want to look like I can't control a meeting. Is this only relevant for when we're looking at support, percentage of support for the, I mean, it's tricky because you can't force Lowell residents to pay Cascade assessments.
So we would have to work with the Lowell Township government in order to collect those special assessments.
That's not what I'm asking. You can't force a Lowell, like if Lowell says, hey, we'll help you through it. part of the process, we'll pass it on. But if I'm in Lowell and I want my road paved, that's one thing. But I'm not going to pay. If you can't, we don't have any, there's no leverage. I mean, we can't force it, right? Unless we,
So our agreement would be with Lowell Township, and Lowell Township would be responsible for enforcing that on the residents.
And then giving us back the money because we paid for it.
I will admit, it is complicated, right?
has it ever been done before that you guys are aware of?
So it's been done before, but it's not common.
Yeah, I mean, enforcement requires money and energy. If I'm Lowell Township, I've got a full plate. I'm not going to spend time and resources of public taxpayer money enforcing Cascade, collection of Cascade. So we can't count on that. That's nothing. If someone wants to send us a check, that's great, but we can only count on and represent Cascade residents and Cascade taxpayer dollars. I don't think we can really count on anything beyond that or really consider anything beyond that. If our job is to represent how Cascade funds are spent and decisions are made.
And I think that's what this is, Grace. I think this is the 1/2 mile section that is Cascade.
No, because the way the road's divided like this and the townships are divided like this. So
Half the residents are in Cascade, half are in.
it just depends. That's why it's a,
How many are in Cascade and how many are in Lowell and that? Out of the 15.
I don't have the exact number. It's about, I mean, obviously it's not even, right? Because it's an odd number, but 8, 7, 7, 8.
if there's
Big wonky.
the Cascade residents that have to drive it every day to get to the portion that's gravel, that's relevant. If they want to,
Right.
that's relevant. They may not have the pavement in front of them, but if they want to drive on less gravel, absolutely. And I'm not trying to minimize Lowell residents' desires or anything. It's just a tricky situation. And from this board, what we need to consider and what we have a responsibility to consider. And this is a convoluted issue. It's just a frustrating issue.
This is a public hearing. Would you be ready to move to public hearing?
No, not yet. I have some questions and I don't know if you're finished.
I'm finished with the presentation, so I'm just here to answer questions.
So road commission is ready to go. They just need the money, but it's on Cascade Township now, right?
That correct. The south 1/2 mile is on Cascade to commit to 55% of the cost of construction. How you pay for it or get your money is 21 townships, different ways of doing business.
Okay, while we have you here. Right now, I see everything set on Cascade Road between 36 and up to Whitney, the lane expansion.
Right.
So I've only been here 2 years. Was that initiated by Cascade that approached the road commission?
No, that's a primary road. Okay,
Okay.
primary roads are 100% road commission responsibility to fund. Local roads are where you get the cost split. Again, you think this is complicated. How we get our money is much more complicated. More money is allocated for primary roads through the state transportation fund, which allows us to fund those 100%. Local roads, we need cost share to do the work because the allocation is much, much smaller on a local road system.
So Cascade Road is not a local road.
Cascade Road is a primary road, which means it's 100% ours. It's not a local road by statute.
Do we have any say in Cascade Road or is it pretty much?
We have input in it, okay? You don't have as much say because you're not financially responsible for it. It's our responsibility financially. But when we build those primary roads, we have discussions with the township. We have public hearings with the residents. So we go through similar type process, but just at the county level on the primary road system.
It's super nice having you here tonight. We'll take all the road commission we can get. It's fun to hear from you. Sorry.
That's
go
why
ahead.
we're here. We serve 21 townships, we serve residents.
So. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. No, but I'm just curious. So it's you're back on our
No,
plate.
My only.
Oh, I didn't
comment
want to
was-
cut you off.
No, my only comment about what he was saying is when they're talking about primary roads, their input from residents is a lot less considered than what we're considering here at this level.
You think that's accurate?
No, we have informational meetings and public hearings.
I have attended some of them.
On
and I just,
primary roads. There's generally on local roads, a little more involvement from the residents because they live there. It doesn't have the same type of traffic volume. We have to look at a Cascade Road differently that carries 6,000 or 7,000 cars a day than a local road that carries 300 cars a day. There's a different level of responsibility for the road authority when you're talking about the difference. There's probably more input from the residents on a local road because they're the ones that are driving the most. Okay, on a primary road, we need to look at those 6,000 plus users along with the residents, but those 6,000, it makes a big difference. Talking 6,000, you're talking 300 motorists today. Those are the people that use the road that were ultimately responsible for their safety. We want input from the residents. 6,000 cars, we have to weigh more on those safety of the residents than we do the local road system.
So then we need to be responsible about our growth plans and land use zoning to take into account growing pains and how we want our roads to look, right?
It's all part of it. I mean, you build it, they will come, but we need a safe system. You talk about car deer accidents, we're part of all that whole system.
Yep.
So, but again, population grows, people come regardless.
Roads get wide.
They accommodate the users, no matter if it's motorized users, non-motorized users, we have to accommodate all modes of transportation the best we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions on township, just as, I know we're gonna get to public hearing.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions, but it can wait till after public hearing if you want. It's out here.
Where's in the packet, the part about the protocol or something that,
Yeah, page.
there's a couple things we're seeing for the first time, so the,
Page 90. Page 90 talks about some local road policy that was adopted in 1998. When I looked at some of the other, the last two times that, again, we were just given this information, but the last two times the township helped pay to pave dirt roads was in 2001 and 2003 or 2005.
2005.
So it's been a while.
so those are the only two, but this.
But yeah, and so these local road policy was adopted even further back in 1998. So just looking through those past cases, just to kind of have an idea of what has happened in the past.
And I wasn't aware. So this is what you found these recently, because this Snow Avenue has been has been a topic for a long time, but then we weren't aware of any past precedent at the township level, or I hadn't seen these protocols either, right? No, I know, but we got the packet Friday. So I'm just saying, even though Snow Avenue has been going on up until Friday, I was thinking, okay, we don't have any past precedent and I didn't know we had protocols. So there's just, I just want residents to know when they're frustrated why we haven't made a decision yet and the government process stinks. When you got 7 decision makers up here who are publicly elected, we got to have all the information and be able to flush it out. And so, and this is important information. Precedent affects how we do in the future. It affects, we got to be fair to everybody. And if we've got protocols or process, even if it was back in 1998, it's worth looking at. So I understand, because I've been hearing from Snow Avenue people and I get it for 2 years, but I can't make good decisions under the gun, and you guys need to be aware of the process. So I apologize to both sides here, but we're going to do it right. And we're not going to look like idiots up here shooting in the dark. We're going to follow protocol process and look at what other places do if we don't have anything.
Right. So, but just based on the stuff that is in the packet for the last two, the 2001, 2005, can you just share what percentage the residents did pay? I could, looking at it, one of them listed dollar amount, and then the second one just stated their responsibility was due on March 1st. It didn't tell the total dollar amount that the residents on that project paid, but I do want people to understand these past 2 cases, how much was the responsibility percentage wise?
Yeah, so let's go over. So 1, what are the 1998 protocols, or however I may say it the wrong way? That's local road policy. And then 2, what did we recently find out? What did staff recently find out about a 2001 project of similar nature and then a 2005 project, which would both be extremely relevant to how we decide issues going forward, including today or in this process.
Yep. So if you look at the policy, the Cascade Charter Township Local Road Policy was adopted March 11, 1998. In section B, there's a list of 17 protocols. So some of them are pretty basic, the age of the road, the length of the road, the condition of the road, potential for water sewer, the number, size, nature of the properties that abut the road, the number, size, nature of the property that have access to the road, the reasons for the citizen request for road construction. Was it for safety, for convenience, for traffic? The anonymity of the citizen's attitudes regarding the requested road project, the nature and consistency of the citizen opposition to the requested project, the willingness or unwillingness of the primary beneficiaries of the road to contribute to the project's funding. Talks about developers, or isn't a developer in this case, but the developer who hope to profit from the road construction should be considered differently from the local residents who do not expect to profit thereby. The projected cost of the project, the alternative project profiles and funding sources, the projected timing of the project, the traffic counts to determine the number of users and the extent to which the road use is purely local, mixed, or township wide, the character of the road, the ability to work with the road commission to help maintain the aesthetic quality or feel of the affected road, and then the budgetary or financial commitment the project places on the township.
So this
So-
is on page 90 of our township board packet, which is on our website.
91, I think is. the
90,
one.
this policy starts on 90 and this is on page, so 91. This sets forth the protocol. Here, let's see, bottom of page 90. The township has developed a protocol for determining when to grant or deny a citizen's proposal for road improvements. Okay, and then I'm just saying so that everyone's on the same page. We saw it for the first time on Friday. And I think these would be the factors that we flush out. So I just want everyone to know who's here tonight. You may not get an answer because we haven't had a chance to flush out the project, the issues properly.
I will make a note too, that looking at the two past cases in 2001, 2005, it looks like at least in one of those, that list of things was brought to the board by township staff for them to consider when they make that decision. So I think that, there's many things that we need, but I think at a minimum, we need the answers to these, which is what it looks like they had in the past to be able to help make a decision.
Paragraph following the protocol. Again, we saw this for the first time Friday. The township has no present intention to enter the road building business and will not affirmatively seek out construction projects. If and to the extent utility projects such as sanitary, sewer, water, et cetera, warrant it, road reconstruction and upgrading will accompany them as a matter of cost efficiency and fiscal responsibility. The township will, however, and I'm just reading, will respond to significant citizen requests for new road construction, road maintenance, road construction and repair on a case-by-case basis and on a first come, first served basis. Using the protocols above in part 2B, we'll prioritize the projects. Can we hear the history on the two precedent cases that are mentioned in the packet 2001 and 2005?
Yep, so the 2001 project was for construction of Buttrick Avenue, and that was between 48th Street and the 5500 block of Buttrick. So again, this is another project where a road goes from being paved to gravel in the middle of the stretch rather than at an intersection, which would be similar to Snow.
So Buttrick where, Ben?
So Buttrick from 48th, it goes underneath that one lane
Yep.
train trestle and then goes to the south. But the paved portion of it terminates and it becomes gravel before it gets down to 60th Street.
Okay.
So the total cost of that project was $412,314. The township share was $236,077. And the residents provided $86,077, which represents 36.46% of the local share.
Do we know how many residents at that time were involved in?
So
it?
yeah, so then again, what ultimately residents paid per household?
Yep, so I don't know. And so it's not necessarily per household either. So in both of these cases, the money
Per
came
parcel.
up front. In fact, so the next one, which was Quiggle
Wait,
Road.
hold on. What do you mean up front, Ben?
Just a second.
Okay.
We talked about this one. So 36th Street from Quiggle Avenue from 36th Street north. Kind of similar. So the local Total cost of the project was $277,000. Of that, the local portion was $152,494. And the residents provided $49,908, which is 32%. I know in that case, there was one resident that funded a majority of that. They basically passed the kitty, and then whatever they needed to make up was given to the township. So in neither of these cases, there wasn't a special assessment district set up. In both those cases, the residents came with cash in hand before the project was set. So there really isn't any record of how the money for the Buttrick Avenue road was collected.
When, with the Quiggle, the person who came with most of the money, was that a developer of some sort or somebody
my
who
question.
It
benefited
was
from
a
it?
namesake for this building.
So 36%, 32%, no SAD, no special assessment district, residents come up front. And then any other examples where we paved roads where,
These are the only two that I was able to find any record of it. And the road commission was actually able to give me the initial information so I could track this all down in the dusty boxes in the basement of this building.
thanks for finding those.
No, you're right. There's a lot to digest, but maybe we should have the public hearing, and then after we get the feedback on where people stand, we can always table.
Definitely. Is there a motion to enter public hearing?
Simply sports.
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley, to enter into the public hearing regarding the Snow Avenue reconstruction project. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are now in public hearing. Please limit your comments or try to about 3 minutes. Name and address for record keeping. In this purpose, please state if you're Cascade or Lowell, and welcome.
Good evening. Cindy and Mike Vandervenen, 5830 Snow. We have been there for 35 years. When we purchased, I don't believe there was any plans at all to have our road paved through Lowell Township.
Sorry, ma'am, are you, your Lowell Township?
We are Lowell.
And would you be in front of, if it were to pave, would you be in front of the Cascades portion that would be paved, or would you be
Yes,
gravel?
they picked our half of the road to pave. And then farther down the hill is their north, they're gonna leave it gravel. And there are some people down in that area that opposed it and didn't want it to happen, but they figured since they picked our half, they're not even here to represent it tonight because they figured they weren't involved with it anymore on the Lowell side. So, you know, my concern is, like you said, the price. My concern is also that the speed limit, 55. We already have people now that go 70, 75 down our street. And I know when it gets paved, they're going to go even faster. And we have a hill that's, pretty steep. So I don't know, I'm sure they're going to have to grade and do that out. We had a resident, I guess, that petitioned to have our road upgraded a couple of years ago, and they put crushed concrete on our road. So when we built 35 years ago, our driveway was level with the road. Well, now from the center of the road to our driveway, it's probably about a foot off. From the edge of the road to our driveway, it's like 6 inches. So we get all the back run down into our driveway when it rains. And we do have it dug out to go down into the ditches and so forth. So, my concern is for one, I don't want it. I don't want to pay for it. That's when we originally bought the land, it was because we wanted to be out in the country. It was the nostalgic of being on a dirt road, We have a few new residents that have come in, and I think when the new residents come in, they were under the impression when they purchased their houses that they were told that the road was going to be paved. And when they found out that it wasn't going to happen, that's when they started petitioning to have the road paved. I would rather see gas come through our neighborhood than paving. And I don't think it's fair for us on site of Lowell to have to pay for a few neighbors that want this. I think we should all be in agreement, and we've been petitioned before. They've come to the houses and we have always said no. And for that meeting in February, we didn't have any idea there was a meeting going on in February. We didn't know anything about it. We just happened to hear from it from some other neighbors.
Was this the
So-
open house? Or
Letters were mailed to all the residents for the open house.
do we
So
limit
you meant, we got when you're saying.
One was mailed.
to
Okay.
Cascade and Lowell Township residents?
Cascade and Lobo? Okay, well, evidently we didn't look at it or we didn't know what it was for. I mean, we didn't have a clue this was going on. So, but thank you. You guys have.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Diane Knapp and I live at 5740 Snow. And I'm in very much favor of paving the road. Today was windy. Dirt is coming in our house. There's just dirt everywhere. When it's raining, this mud is everywhere. You know, in the past, they've brined it to keep the dust down and stuff that's rusting on your cars. We bring dirt into our garage all the time. We're always power washing it. It's just a mess. It's just, it totally deflates the value of our beautiful properties. We all have gorgeous properties out there and nice rolling landscape, and we have this mud dirt road. And as far as the speed limit goes, people go down that road so fast. It's ridiculous. I don't think paving is going to make one iota of a difference at all to the speed. You know, we're always, my husband and I walk all the time, and we're always like dodging cars, and you know, it's ridiculous. But the paving is not going to change anything. It's going to make our property more valuable. It's going to be safer. It's going to be cleaner. It's just going to be a better all around environment for the place that we live and we share and call home. We've lived there 25 years. So
Are you on the Cascade Township side or the Lowell side?
I don't even know. We're in Lowell Township and I'm in total favor of it.
Okay.
And would be willing to pay some money for it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Jim Gruber. I live on 9590 Anderson Acres, and we've lived there for about 20 years now. So when we moved in, which we're right across the street from Mike and Cindy, it was a 2-track road. But for some reason, the road commission did a great job crowning our road and bringing fill in and leveled it out and crowned it to get all the water off, which was absolutely spectacular. But our road is 100% Autobahn. Caledonia gets called once a week. Lowell schools get called once a week because their buses are running so fast up and down our road. And I personally call them. There's 11 people, Ben, that I counted, 6 on one side and 5 on the other. Split right down the middle.
Does that include the entire
No.
mile stretch or half
No,
mile?
the north end, there's 2 people in Cascade and 2 in Lowell. So
How many, the 11 and 5, well, how many are on?
6 and 5?
Cascade?
6 and 5
How many,
is that half mile.
right, but how many are
Oops.
on side and how many are on?
6 are on Cascade, 5 are on Lowell. And then there's 4 at the other end, 2 are on Cascade and 2 are on Lowell. So
This
it's
is just
almost-
population wise?
That's it.
No, sorry, not just. I mean, and then do you know how the
Yeah, some people,
public what the desire is based? So we're dealing with,
yeah, so I'm
15.
going to use an example. Mike and Cindy, okay, they have a 1 lot road frontage. There's people up there that have 20 acres road frontage.
but it hasn't been split yet, right?
Right, and it never will be. They won't go for it. That's Janishek. It's a family farm. He won't go for it. Yeah, landscaping, they're not going to go for it.
Okay, so
So what I'm saying is, let me finish and then we can figure this out later. I don't understand the cost. There's no way I'm paying any cost for that. Drainage is deplorable on our road because our ditches have never been cleaned in 10 years. They just sit full of leaves and branches and pebbles and gravel. I've called the road commission. They go, no, we can't do yours. Great. So anyways, I don't understand who's paying for it, who's fixing it. And it was a country setting when we moved there, and that's exactly what we want to keep it.
Sir, are you on the Cascade side or the Lowell side?
I'm on the Cascade side. I'm the farthest away from the fire department on Cascade side.
Anderson Woods.
But you know where we live.
Thank you. We'll flush it out. Anyone else?
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Mrs. Catherine Gruber. That's my husband that just came up. We've lived there 23 years, to make it correct. We moved out there because of the country atmosphere. We loved, sorry, beloved, but we loved our dirt road. And you would say, how can you love a dirt road? It's because the road commission, from our understanding and what we would observe, took excellent care of that dirt road. There was less pits and less bumps than I found on 60th driving to Cascade Road. There's nothing, it was beautiful. Then they put this crushed concrete, and it took away the beauty of what we had. It raised the road, it made it hard, it made it gravelly. It's not good. We're stuck with it now though. And we're not happy with it. So what's the deal? The deal is we moved out there to have a country atmosphere. We want to keep it. Yep, we're for the Cascade side. We pay a lot of taxes. We don't want to pay more. We're getting into our retirement age. We do not want to raise farther taxes just to appease a paved road and some beloved neighbors. I'm not against my neighbors. I love all my neighbors, but we want to keep things as copacetic as possible, especially our roads. It's just not compatible because here we go. We have the Lowell side is this dirt road. Now they want to make us just a short little path of paved. Then you have 60th, which is paved. Then you have snow going past that is all dirt, except for way down there, but it's dirt. So you have dirt, 60th, dirt, 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 dirt. So you got some consistency. Now they want to stick a half a mile of paved road right smack dab in the middle on our side, where we're at. It's not consistent. It is also it is aesthetically disapproved. I aesthetically disapprove of it because I think that would take away from my house property value. We have a horse corral right by the ditch. So if the road is made, they would take away our ditch, but it would go right up to where our horse corral is. Now, speaking about horses, in Alto, where we're at, there are wonderful families who own horses. And that country road is perfect for them to ride their horses down. And that's part of our, oh, it's my time up? Okay, sorry. But that's part of the beauty of living out there is the fact that they can take those horses. I take walks on that street all the time and I don't have trouble with cars. So I guess it's just a different opinion, but there you go. We vote no.
So you guys are right at the corner. So this is like 60th Snow. You are right at the corner of.
Yes, we're like the second mailbox down. We have a neighbor too. It's closer to Snow than, I'm sorry, closer to 60th than us. I don't think he's here tonight. I don't think so. We were talking and he's not for it either. He says, there's no way I'm going to get this money out of the sale of my house. There's just no way. And there's a couple of other people too that I talk with and they're not for it. I don't know where they are tonight, but unless I'm not seeing them, but yeah, there's a lot of people that I'm aware of that are thumbs down. Please don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Matt Buckhold, 5776 Snow Avenue, and I'm on the Lowell side, so the east side of the road. I've had the property for about 24 years, and then we built a few years after that, and then moved into the house. So the house was new when we moved in. There's a total of 15 properties that are in scope. So some of those are vacant. On the east side, there are 7 properties. On the west side, there are 8 properties. So 7 in Lowell, 8 on the Cascade side. And again, a few of those are vacant. The bigger properties that are acreage, like 20 acres and things, are in the north portion of the road that is not the scope of this particular project. So as we look at like where I'm at, it's agricultural 2 zoning. I have 5.5 acres. That zoning doesn't allow that to be split less than 5 acres. So in my location, it wouldn't be able to be reduced. The reason that I support it is, I do think people drive very fast on that road. I don't think it's going to get faster with the paved side. I live at the top of that hill. So with all the washouts, that is really a 1-lane road. When the washouts were repaired, it's a 2-lane road, but when it's all washed out, the only way you can come up that road is down the middle. So my driveway exits and comes out right at the top of that hill. The school buses, like Jim mentioned, are one of the biggest offenders at 60, 70 miles an hour. But when they're down in that hill and you don't see them and you're pulling out of your driveway, if you're further down the road, that's not as much of a problem. But for me, it's a huge problem of being able to get line of sight and get out of that space. And then, in addition to safety, is this the chance to have a clean car? Like Diane mentioned, just that ability to, I have motorcycles as well as a hobby. I can't even really ride them on a big portion of the time, depending on the weather and what the road's doing in terms of, mud and things like that. So in general, I support it. I'm on the Lowell side. I'd be happy to pay. I'd even be happy to help some neighbors pay. This is something I'd really like to see if payment is an issue. That's not something that's a problem from my side. And also spoke with Larry and Michelle Frisbee. They're at 5615 Snow Avenue. They have a vacant lot on the Cascade side. They live in Hastings now. They used to live on the road. And they're in support of the project as well, even if they would need to pay to put money towards the project. So
Do we have of the 15 total, 8 on Cascade side, 7 on Lowell? Do we have a breakdown of the pros and cons, the votes for those 15?
yeah, I believe Ben has that. Yes.
Okay, Ben, what was the
Well,
8 in
so
Cascade?
right now, all we have is a petition for the township to do the engineering. Right, so the idea is to have this conversation and then give the residents an opportunity to say whether they support the project or not, based on the information that comes out of this meeting. So there was people that potentially supported getting the engineering for it, but then upon seeing the cross-section or understanding that they might have to pay for it, they decide that, no, I don't support this project. So I think it's unfair to take the information from that original petition and apply it to support or not support of the general project.
So the work to date by the road commission would not be considered, what would you call the work to date? It's not engineering, then it's,
Preliminary engineering, yeah.
and then there's more engineering.
So if the project goes forward, they would do actual project engineering. So basically, they try to keep the cost down just so that they can have an accurate cross-section, so they can understand what trees are going to be removed, all that, and to give us a good faith estimate on what the project is going to cost.
Sorry,
No.
question about, I think either you or he mentioned some of the people that were originally petitioned are in more of the Lowell control of the road versus the Cascade control of the road. Has this been brought to Lowell, and what was their response?
Lowell's response is they were not going to pay for anything.
So it was just a door shut, like, okay.
You take the entirety of the amount that they spend on paving roads each year, and it wouldn't cover their costs to cover their half of the road. Now, they did say that if their residents were in favor of it and in favor of a special assessment, they would assist us in doing that. But we're a long ways away from figuring out if that's a true option. But as far as Lowell Township contributing Lowell Township dollars to the project, it was pretty clear that they weren't able to do that.
So is the question, do we want to move on to the next step of engineering?
No. So the question would be, is that, do we want does the board So the no answer is that the project is the township decides they don't want the road paved. That basically ends everything. If the board decides that there is merit in having the road paved, then the conversation needs to happen around, okay, how is the local match going to get paid for, right? So if the board says, so the next no option would be the board says, okay, we want the road paved and the township's going to pave the whole road. We would still ask the petitioner to circulate another petition to them saying, now that the engineering's done, so you understand what trees you're going to lose, you understand, what the cross section is going to look like, and you understand you're not going to have to pay for any of it. Do you support the project or don't you support the project?
Don't we need to know where people's, to move forward, to make a decision? Don't we need to know initially, like, have a good feel on where people are at right now, like support versus not support?
But that's what we're collecting.
Okay.
And I think what Ben is saying is we need to give the residents a little more direction. And what are we going to ask them to pay for 30%? We're going to ask them to pay for 0%. Then we could table it and go back and say, okay, we've decided we'll pave this and pay for 70%. If you pay for 30%, do you like this? Yes or no? And then the final decision could be made. Or we could say, we'll pay for all of it. Do you want the road? Yes or no? So I think we could.
So they need more clarification and direction, and we need more clarification and
You
direction.
need to collect it from them tonight and then give at least, and to, Wendy's point too, if you guys don't have enough information tonight to even do that, you can collect the information that the residents are giving you and then direct staff to say, okay, besides the information we got from the residents, we need you to provide us with this, this, and this before we give that direction back out.
Public comments.
There was another gentleman.
Good evening. I'm Dave Knapp, and we live just down the hill from Matt, the just presented, and 5740 Snow. We've lived there 25 years. I'm very much in favor of paving the road. We're on the Lowell side. We do have horses. I have ridden out there, and it's not safe for same reasons that Matt just outlined. You can't always control, the condition of the horse, but with school buses and so on, trucks going up and down that road, it's not for trail riding with or without pavement. I think that is a moot point about speed. People aren't going to necessarily, I don't think they're going to go faster because, it's paved or not paved. They do go screaming down through there. I think it's incredible, any more than paving your driveway. I think we're willing to participate in payment from, and being on with the Lowell side. But I think any more than paving your driveway, to pave that road and appreciate the value of the property, appreciate the value of the vehicles, that salt and crud that gets up in the vehicles, it just depreciates them so much faster unless you're going to the car wash every day. Today was one of the it was just a dust bowl. I think it wouldn't take many days like today to turn it into a lung hazard. But anyway, I'm very much in favor of paving the road.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if I can come up again or not. 5830 Snow. I have horses too, and I've been riding out there for 35 years. As for the dust, the county just came down our road. He did 5 strips up and down our road today. That's why it's so dusty. And, when our neighbors bought their houses, they bought their houses with a dirt road. It must have appealed to them at the time when they purchased their house. I like all my neighbors, but I didn't buy the land and build my house to live in a subdivision. If that's where I wanted to be, that's where I would have built my house, and I would have had sidewalks and I would have had paved roads. And I just don't think it's fair that you're asking the Lowell side people to fork out the money. You don't know where each family's finances sit, if they can afford it. And I don't think it's fair that they're being asked to do it. So that's all. Have a good night.
Theo Vandershaft, 5667 Snow, Cascade side. So I was the one that started the petition to pave the road, and basically from what Matt and I have seen, I did talk to Greg, which is at the end of the Cascade side. And he pretty much, I talked to him today, he said he would pretty much go along with the group. The way I see the count is right now that there's 3 out of the 15 that said no. And there's 12 that said yes.
What about Cascade side?
Cascade
Cascade.
side would be 1, myself, 2, Larry, Arthur, yes. The 1 gal in Anderson Acres, yes, and Greg. So those are all Cascade sides.
So what's is it 8 total?
I think so. Yeah.
How many out of 8 are yeses?
What's that?
How many out of 8 are yeses? In
6.
So past precedent, which we just learned about, we've got 2 examples. One, the contribution was 32%, the other was 36%. We have 0 examples where the township on this type of issue funded 100%. I'm just going on, these are the factors that we're considering. And now we know that we've got a specific list of considerations that we can kind of work through. You take 32% of what it costs, 363,000 for this half-mile portion, comes out to 100, just roughly 116,000. So $116,000. We can't legally, I don't think, count on, if people want to throw money at it, fantastic. Well, I assume who is the government to turn down free money? Lowell welcomes, I mean, you could do it, but the Lowell side won't be, you can't count on it. So you got 8 Cascade.
I think the low side could,
6% versus the lower number. I bared on the side, and that would be 8 lots there on Cascade side, $14,850 each lot.
So this is just
Would-
consideration, we moving forward to consider issues and you guys moving forward as far as what you're willing to contribute as we go through this process. Because our job, love hearing from everyone, and we're all part of a community, and but from we're up deliberating on how to spend Cascade tax dollars, and we can only we can't control Lowell, and we really can't force, so we take it into consideration. But when you come down to crunching numbers and you're talking about how much you're going to pay, we can count on 8, not 15. So, and I'm just, so what is, you take 100, you did the 36%?
36%, which was $118,800, which was ended up being 79. That was on the 15 lots. On the 8 lots, it was 14,850.
So rough, this is just rough, but and again, we haven't been, this is all newer to us too. Roughly $14,500 Cascade. Lowell people, that would be lowered if Lowell people wanted it and were willing to contribute. But as far as 32% of the portion that gets paid, Cascade residents that would be on the hook based on past precedent, approximately 14,500. That's assuming, I mean, if other people want to contribute, then the cost goes down, but just so that everyone has a feel for what, so that moving forward based on, is it worth that to you?
right. Well, I guess when we started all this, we didn't, we knew Lowell didn't have any money.
But we did, yeah, and I didn't know. I'm been here 2 years. I've talked to you before and I feel bad that so we're gonna flush it all out, but.
But I mean, we can't just disregard that the people in Lowell are gonna say, aren't gonna participate in this, where you've already heard a few of them say they are.
Well, right, but then just so as we move forward, and the people who are welcome to come forward and say it's worth this much to me, and here's how much we'll contribute, and then we'll rework our numbers. But we're just saying based on that percentage
Right.
and the dollar amount, we at the board level, if they want to add on, we'll take it. Obviously, that's fantastic,
Right.
but we can't count on it when we're making a decision, and it wouldn't be responsible for us to do
Well,
that.
up until Friday, which I don't know what happened on Friday, that all this
Packet came out with
information
more
came out,
information.
but, the 32% or whatever percent that would be part of the participants on the street, could have been a 0.
Up until Friday, I wasn't aware, which I get it. Stuff happens and you learn about it, but I wasn't, I don't think we were aware of any past precedent. So we were.
Right,
didn't have it.
well, I'm just saying, right now, you're using that as the basis of how much it's gonna cost everybody.
Just so we move forward, we're not making any decisions, but if we learned about it, we got to pass it on to you guys so that your expectations can be reasonable. And we're not making any decisions, but that is a reasonable thing to consider as you ponder
Yeah, just
14,005.
because it was okay then, doesn't mean it has to be okay now, but.
Yeah, but if you're one of 7 of publicly elected officials who are making a hot, making decisions for a tiny thing that was hotly contested, I think it's smart to consider past precedent and how it affects future stuff.
So do we go talk to Lowell Township on your behalf as far as getting them to agree to make an assessment with the Lowell people?
That's a staff issue. I don't know.
Based on so if the board provided the feedback that they were interested in having a special assessment, staff would have those conversations with Lowell. What that process would look like and their willingness to do it.
So if you're looking for board direction, this board member wants to hear specific about what people in Cascade residents that are affected are willing to pay. And I would be curious, just based on numbers, start around the 32%, which comes out to $14,500. That's just Cascade. And if we're Lowell people get together and talk, if Lowell people want to contribute, that takes the number less. Then you got to consider, in addition to that, how the breakdown can, the popularity of the overall issue. Because if it's close, that's not a headache we want to take. But if it's,
Right.
we're in a really tough
is there-
spot.
Is it?
This isn't a fun thing to decide,
No,
but it's
I
important.
realize that. But I'm just saying, talking to Lowell, I mean,
Lowell doesn't have the money, but maybe they'd be willing, I don't know, Ben, special assessment districts, they set it up, but then the residents pay. So,
yeah.
And that would be dividing that.
and that's a Lowell
15,000
issue.
And adding an extra 7 lots. And
Wait a minute, but Lowell is
$1,000.
But we're talking about Cascade's portion. So is Lowell going to set up a special assessment district to collect for, you know what I'm saying, and their own residents?
That's the way it
Maybe.
was presented to me.
So Jerry has said, at least from their supervisor, that yes, they would have the conversation with us about doing that.
Except then the issue, you can't forget about enforcement, right? Because you can set it up, but then you got to enforce it. So I don't know, it depends on what you can count on. We're not going to spend taxpayer monies in Cascade to enforce Lowell residents to do, at least I wouldn't be in favor of
I mean,
that.
if you sign an agreement, it's like by having a mortgage, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're not going to get into to spend general Cascade dollars into I don't know, there's got to be. I don't know.
Plus money has to be all collected before you guys even start the project.
If it's overwhelmed, the best thing is if you're in Lowell. I don't know, it's all important to consider. In the past, a few people, that 32% was made up, not out of a special assessment district. Welcome.
Like you said, Grace, if I may, this is a messy issue. And thank you for your,
Sorry to be the bearer of annoyingly bad news for both sides.
it
but
really
this-
is, but I appreciate your wise and observant remarks. It is messy. We don't want to, we love our neighbors. It's just that we have different priorities, obviously. I have to combat a couple of things that were said. I'm a personal witness to a man named Greg. I'm sorry, I don't know his last name. He is our neighbor. And I spoke with him personally, went over to the house and said, what do you think about this road? And he says, I am not for it. He says, I'll tell you what. He said, I can't get my money out of this if I sell this property from how much they want to spend to pave this road. And he says, I really don't want it. He says, why would I want that? Okay, so that's him. There is another young lady who lives up the cul-de-sac from us off of Snow. Renee Geely, I believe she might be here. And her and I were talking. She was one of the people that came to the first meeting that was mentioned tonight and said she thought it was going to be a good idea. And then when she found out what was really going to happen and what was really going to undertake for us as living on that road, she was sick to her stomach. And that's a quote. She does not want the road. A speed issue was talked. Yes, it is. People go fast sometimes down the road, but when it was a dirt road, they went slower because they don't want to ruin their cars. And so if it's paved, we are going to have trouble with safety wise. We have children and grandchildren playing on that road. It's a countryside road. We are happy with the way it is. Yep, it's that little dusty sometimes, but that's a part of living out there. Motorcycles, my husband and I are Harley riders. Well, we put that aside for a while, but anyways, motorcycles, I rode my motorcycle on that dirt road. Not a problem, not an issue. And then I have a question, I guess for the road commission. So we all know in Michigan, when we have a paved road, it doesn't stay paved very long. It's filled with potholes. So on our little road that is wanting to be paved, who's in charge of cleaning and fixing up the potholes in about 5 years? That's a question.
We'll get back to
Will
it.
we have to pay for these potholes? And how long will we have to wait for the potholes to be fixed? 60th had potholes that I had to drive around to the other side of the road for months and months and months and months and months and months. Finally, we got 60th somehow repaved. So yeah, I take issue with having it paved again. Thank you.
This is an important, good part of the process, and just to live, let's say 2 public comments per person on this topic, okay? All good, just
Good afternoon. So Rob Dewey, I am at 50I05 Snow Road. So I would be on the Cascade side. I did bring a few things that my wife actually prepared because she's much smarter than me. So. Would you be able to? Yeah. She's an attorney by nature, so there's going to be some legal stuff in there. So she just kind of put together like what is kind of the statute. Some of the key things she put out is, a road that ours would qualify. Typically, you're looking at 33 feet would be the typical width. I believe at our informational meeting, that's what they were going to widen the road to. We took some current measurements really because same thing, that top of the hill keeps getting brought up. It's really kind of a blind hill. I'm right at the top of it. Going down that road, and it's probably at this worst state of the year right now. We measured it. The widest part at that hill is 21.9 inches. The mid part is at 16.6. So really for us at this point, that's when we kept saying, you're going up a hill blind, going down, it comes almost to one track. And essentially it's about half the size of what the road should be. So just to kind of show some pictures of the road on the left-hand side is really where it typically washes out. They've tried to fix it multiple times. It actually is now become like a 3.5 foot like washout area that continues to go on the road. So this is the right shoulder of the road. I thought there's another picture that kind of shows it. Oh, shoot us on that picture. So she talks about, it has to be sprayed with a certain chemical, those kind of things. And she quotes University of Minnesota about the environmental concerns with that, as well as paved versus gravel road. They're subject to erosion, which can generate a lot of sediment. It runs off into the water course, which we have pictures of that. This is like the erosion runoff into the woods. And these pictures were taken this week, so these were this week. So that there's actually gullies that goes off into the property there. So it's pretty significant runoff. And so for us, it's not only a safety but environmental issue, and we just want to make sure you have that information. This is the vegetation into the woods, if you're able to see that. And at just 0.2 of a mile past this project, so on the Lowell side, is a wetland habitat that would be on the north side. So she actually has a map of it is a wetland map that's state wetland, and the blue dot is where it ends in this area.
Time's up.
Again, environmental. So wanted to enter this into the record for your consideration.
thank you.
Thank you.
Start thinking about that 14,500 number as you
Yeah, sure. We'd be for it, wouldn't be a problem. I think for us, I think at the information we talked about, what would be a cost and, the board does have authority to go with 0%, so that's a possibility. And we talked about precedent and they said, I think we struggled to find precedent back then. But having two projects in the last 20 plus years that you can refer to, and I think it even brought up, they don't even know if there's another project even potential after ours. Like we're pretty much like one of two, I think, potential available. So I'm not sure if precedent in the future is something that is a concern either. So, but it would be interesting to know.
Thank you.
Well, just to comment on that for Rob. Yeah, there is a future because Bolt, for example, is in Cascade Township. That's a dirt road. Burton is in Cascade Township, and we've gone through this with the neighbors there, and there are other cases.
And I will say too, in the same packet, it talks road commission stuff at some point. We have 4.91 miles of local gravel roads that states, and this is only a
One
half
half.
a mile of that. So we do have the potential.
We ready to close.
Any more comments at public? Welcome. Between deer and gravel roads, there's gonna be nothing left to complain about at the end of tonight. Sure, someone will come up with something. Welcome and please
Hi,
proceed.
I'm Renee Greenlee. I live at 9570 Anderson Acres. That's Cascade side. And I went to the first meeting because I wanted to know what they were thinking, kind of check it out. You live there, you need to know. After hearing everything, I've decided I do not want it. I like my country road. I like my gravel road. I like the quietness country, and I'm going to lose that. I don't like the 55 mile per hour. So as far as it being narrower than a normal road, it's a gravel road. Makes people go slow, and that's what we like out there, the quiet. So I don't want it anymore.
And are you on the portion, would you front the part that would be paved or would you
Yes.
pass through it?
No, I would be on the paved side. Yep,
Thank you.
for Cascade.
So you're one of the 6, right?
One of 8.
Anderson Acres.
Oh.
Okay. Any other public comment, either in person or virtually?
If anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Nope, no one would like to make a comment.
Move to
Okay.
close public hearing.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Kessel to close public hearing on this matter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are now out of public hearing, back in regular session. Part B, consideration by the board on the same issue.
Yeah, I think as we learn the hard way again, you can't please all the people all the time.
Mm-mm.
And we've never succeeded in doing so. And if we did, we'd be the only entity to ever do such. So I think maybe this is our out because what we're looking for is more information to really clarify. So I'd like this to be considered to move to table this case with the agreement that based on precedence, residents would pay 32% of the Cascade Township cost via a special assessment district. But first, I would, in the process, as we table this, I'd like to ask staff if they could solicit input from the 15 residents on the Cascade and Lowell side to get a clear understanding of would they support this, knowing that they would have to pay up to 32%, which could be done via special assessment. And it's probably around the $14,000 mark, not upfront, but via special assessment. So that's the first thing I'd like to ask staff to do. And then second is to work with Lowell to see what they feel the viability would be of them being able to collect that for those on the Lowell side. Ben, you can go ahead and.
I guess I would just comment that that's actually the direction we're looking for tonight. So I don't think you need to table it.
Okay.
Because we weren't asking you to say, yes, we're doing the project. No, we're
Okay,
not doing
I
the
gotcha.
project. What we were looking for is the exact same that you said, so we could go back and we would actually do it through a petition process. So it wouldn't be this hearsay about, well, I talked to Greg down the
Gotcha.
street. We would make them circulate another petition that said, do you support this project? you will pay X amount of dollars over X amount of years for a special assessment. And then that petition will come back in front of the township board. So you'll see actual,
Perfect. Okay.
actual signatures certified by the clerk's office.
And that special assessment would only be assessed to the property owners on 60th Street, I'm sorry, on Snow Avenue. Not in the project area. Does that include Anderson Woods?
Yes, because their private drive accesses Snow Avenue.
Anderson Woods or I was
Anderson.
gonna say Anderson Woods, but
So Ben, do we need a motion or did that just give you enough direction?
One
Yeah,
other
just,
direction in addition to that, is information related to the protocols that it's spelled out in there. I think we need that brought to us in a summary, just like it looks like it was previously brought to the board for part of the consideration.
Part B of that policy on page 91 of the packet. Anything that stands, if we kind of go through that. So finding out from a resident's perspective, what the support is. all-
based on them.
Yep, all 15, but with the yeah, how it breaks down with all the different 8, 7, whatever, and then with the different cost scenarios. Like, for
And-
example, if I'm on Lowell's side, but I want the payroll, okay, I'd be willing to pay X, blah, 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 before construction date, right? Because that's more money than I'd be willing to maybe do a special assessment, because realistically, the enforcement's difficult. You know what I mean? Voluntary money coming in from people who legally would be difficult to demand that, require it, I guess. But then also pro negative gravel pavement too.
So Ben, we've given you kind of some direction. We don't need to make a motion or anything, right? We just,
I would make the motion to do that. I just doesn't need to include the table because that's the actual
then-
direction. we're looking.
Ms. Supervisor, let me restate this. I move that we direct staff to solicit input from the 15 residents on each, both the Cascade and Lowell sides of their support for this project, knowing that they would collectively have to pay up to 32% or would have to pay would have to pay 32% of the Cascade Township cost via special assessment district. And then 2, to work with Lowell to see what the viability is for them to collect that assessment should the majority really want to move forward.
Support.
Lots of layers to that, though. Do you get it? So that's a motion by trustee, oh, sorry, go ahead. Nope.
The amount of residents.
We'll flush it out.
Sorry,
We
sorry.
get the numbers right.
She
Go ahead.
was, sorry, she was calling on me. I'm the minute taker. I'm sorry. She was calling on me. It's not public hearing anymore. I'm sorry.
So
So how are we how am I writing this?
Don't know. I don't know. Find out a bunch. of
I can write it for you
specifics.
later, Chris.
Will you?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but doesn't it have to be now on the record?
We can take it from the audio.
We can take it from the audio then.
So basically, it's an information gathering.
It's information, staff is doing 2 information gatherings. 1, getting with the residents, asking them, will they support the project or not, knowing that they're going to have to pay 32% of the township cost via a special assessment. And 2, work with this Lowell to see what they feel, if they can collect that and then pay it back to us from their residents.
We want to know all of them. We got to consider who we could be mandatory, who really, yeah, makes sense.
And then Jim supported that.
Supported by, so that was a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Kessel.
To do
All
those,
in-
to direct
do-
staff to do those things.
Direct staff to get all that information so that the board can make further considerations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 033-2023. Nope, 032-2023. Sorry. 2023 local street work orders. Manager Swayze?
More street stuff. So every year we budget general fund dollars to go towards the improvement of local roads. The process for identifying local roads typically begins in the winter and early spring when a list of potential road improvements is developed by the Cascade Township staff and provided to the road commission for further investigation. The initial list of roads is compiled compiled by the township is developed utilizing resources such as our PASER ratings, which are supplied by the road commission, complaints that the township has received and requests that the township have received from residents and businesses, and visual inspections by the township staff. The road commission then takes the possible project list, provides recommendations to the township on maintenance or repair activities and cost estimates. The list is further reviewed by the township staff to select the highest priority projects considered within the construction of the budget allocation for road repair, and then presented to the township board for potential approval. So at the March 2023 board meeting, the board discussed at length several areas for proposed 2023 work. And that work was discussed within the context that 2024 and 2025 will most likely be dedicated to work in the Berger Goodwood neighborhood once the water main installation is complete. So based on that discussion, the township requested work orders for several areas in the township. That includes a full mill and fill project in the Abbeydale neighborhood, a crush and shape work on Buttrick, as well as some less invasive preservation work in areas that were repaved 5 to 6 years ago to make sure that we maintain the pavement integrity of the areas that we've repaved in the past. There's a whole section about just generally about our roads. I won't go into detail, but can answer any questions that you have about that. So the road commission has several repair options available for local road paved system. The repairs range from full depth mill and fill, which could run close to $300,000 per centerline mile, to microsurfacing, which is $50,000 per centerline mile. The treatments are appropriate for certain road conditions. Roads that are in the good and fair category may be eligible for less intensive treatments, while poor roads often need full depth mill and fill or similar work. Should also be noted that there's diminishing return on investments for certain treatments when they have been applied multiple times. For example, a road that's been microsurfaced may have 7 years added to its useful life. The second time the same treatment is applied to the same road, it may only extend the useful life for 3 or 4 years. So based on the conversation we had at the last meeting, township staff have identified 0.63 miles of roads that have been rated poor on the PASER scale and being recommended to be addressed with full depth mill and fill. 2 miles are being recommended for crush and shape repair, and another 2.26 miles for seal coating. The total cost of the work is approximately $1 million, of which the township would be responsible for $502,500. And details on those roads can be found in the work orders. So as typical with the budget process, we budgeted $400,000 for local road maintenance in years past. The bidding has provided for savings of the engineer estimates. And the recommendation would be, if the board wants to do all of this work, to wait for bidding results before determining if a budget amendment will be needed for the work. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is keeping with our long-term plan for road repair, right? These would be the next logical ones.
Yeah, and really, with the conversation with the road commission, is that next step, right? We've made the commitment to the full depth mill and fill project for a majority of our local roads, because consistently over the past 30 years, we had done preservation. So we made that commitment to do the full depth mill and fill. Now that we've done that, we need to pick up the preservation again to make sure that in 15 years, we're not trying to do a full depth mill and fill again. We want to make sure that we get as much longevity out of those roads as possible by continuing to do the less invasive and cheaper preventative maintenance things.
And also I noticed, Ben, that as we discussed at previous meetings, the focus is on the residential areas.
Correct.
Okay, cool. I'm very cool with that.
I move to approve the 2023 Cascade Township Local Road Improvements Program as we've already reviewed.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley, to approve the 2023 proposed local street work orders. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 033, 2023, Township Liquor License Ordinance. Manager Swayze?
Great, thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight, both of you, and
Thanks,
sticking it
Jerry.
out.
So the State of Michigan Liquor Control Commission is the state of Michigan agency responsible for the regulation of the sale of alcoholic beverages in the state. They accomplish this through an array of liquor licenses that are available for the specific business model the applicant is seeking. Certain licenses, primarily those involved the consumption of alcohol on premises, require local legislative approval before the MLCC will consider issuing the permit. Others require the opinions of the local legislative body to be considered prior to issuance, but not the approval. I did include a chart in your packet detailing the approval requirements for each type of license. So the most popular type of license for on-site consumption of alcohol is referred to as a Class C license. This license allows a restaurant or a bar to sell and serve beer, wine, and mixed spirit drink and spirits to customers. They may be issued as a quota, resort, RDA, DDA, or special act license. And there's all sorts of rules that come along with all of those as well. But the key is that local legislative approval is required for a new, previously unissued license, but not required for the transfer ownership or location of an existing license. So each municipality in Michigan is assigned a quota of Class C licenses based on a formula of one license for every 1,500 residents. And based on the 2020 census, the township was recently allocated an additional Class C license. So Class C licenses are commoditized at the state level. Once an entity has successfully secured a Class C license, they're able to sell that license to another entity through an ESCO process. That license can also be transferred to another municipality that is in a county that abuts the county that the license originated in. Because of that commoditization, licenses that sell from one entity to another can fetch upwards of $75,000 on the open market, even though they only cost $600 to purchase them from the state. So in an attempt to ensure that quota licenses remain in their communities, several local municipalities have instituted a requirement that the applicant for the license enters into an agreement with a municipality whereby if the business ceases to operate, the license will be returned to the state rather than sold or transferred to another entity. This ensures that the license will remain available in the township for future applicants to apply for, rather than being transferred for profit potentially outside of the township. I did include a couple items in your packet. The proposed liquor license ordinance amendment that was drafted by our legal counsel, MLCC document that describes all the different kinds of licenses, as well as the document that details the approval for each one of those kinds of licenses as well. So by amending our current liquor license ordinance to include the required agreement to return the license to the state if it's no longer being used, we can ensure that other current or future township entities will have the ability to apply for those coveted licenses. If the amendment is adopted by the township, staff and legal counsel will then amend our current application materials to solicit applications for the currently available Class C license. I will say that will not be tough. I've already talked to several township businesses that are interested in obtaining that Class C license. So if the township wishes to move forward with the amendment of the liquor license ordinance, we'll have to have a public hearing prior to consideration. Staff is recommending the public hearing be set for the regular township board meeting on April 26, 2023. After the public hearing is held, the township board may choose to amend the liquor license ordinance at that meeting or any future meetings. The repeal of or amendment of the liquor license ordinance itself comes with minimal costs, primarily including staff time, printing, and publishing.
Questions, discussion?
I've got a comment. I think in order to serve our residents and our businesses versus profiteering, I think that we should go ahead and I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for this amendment. Recommendation was April 26th, which is our next regular meeting.
Support. This, further discussion? It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by treasurer Corstange, to move forward with setting a public hearing on the Cascade Township liquor license ordinance amendment for April 26th this month. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 034-2023. Fire alarm ordinance. Manager Swayze?
Great, thank you. So we currently have a fire alarm ordinance, which was originally adopted in 2010. And the purpose of the ordinance was facilitate the reduction of fire alarms and the misuse of manpower and resources of the fire department caused by the dispatch of units to the scene of a false alarm. So one shortcoming of the ordinance, as it's currently written, is that it narrowly defines an alarm system as a fire alarm. We've recently had issues with responses to other types of alarms, primarily medical alert alarms in our senior living complexes. There have been instances where our department has responded to multiple false alarm calls in a day because of the company's failure to fix the system. So we did ask legal counsel to help us remedy this situation, and they've drafted a couple amendments to our ordinance. The ordinance will broaden the definition of alarm system to include more than just traditional fire alarms. They'll also broaden the definition of a false alarm. It updates the fine structure and payment process, and it adds an addition of appeal process. So I included the proposed ordinance in your packet. So by amending the current alarm ordinance, the township will be better positioned to recover costs associated with repeated false alarms in the township. The progressive enforcement and fines will allow us to continue with our typical compliance enforcement model, where we utilize the ordinance and penalties to compel compliance with the ordinance rather than immediate fines. But the ordinance also has enough teeth to recover significant costs should the need arise. Just like the last one, if the board wants to move forward with these amendments, we first have to hold a public hearing, and staff is recommending that this public hearing be held on April 26th as well. Again, the repeal or amendment of the ordinance itself comes with minimal costs. However, the amendment of the ordinance will allow the township to recover significant costs associated with responding to multiple false alarms at an individual address.
Got a question. If we adopt this ordinance, and I'm all in favor of public hearings anyways, if we adopt this ordinance, who pays the buck? Does the alarm company, or do we go down to Granny Goodheart at Sentinel Point and say, hey, Granny, give me the bucks?
Yeah, we would issue it to the owner of the alarm system, which is typically going to be the person who owns the building.
I can live with that.
So the memo would be setting the public hearing for the next meeting, right? Our next meeting, so 2 weeks from now?
I'd make a motion that we set up a public hearing on this amendment at the recommended meeting, April 26th.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald, to move forward with setting a public hearing on April 26, 2023 on this issue regarding the amendment to the local liquor license ordinance. One item for discussion, just one comment. It works out perfectly because, Manager Swayze, am I right, that legal counsel will also be here the next meeting to talk about what's been in the works for a long time, talk about wasted resources, first responders, township funds to all the hotel owners that are just crime ridden. And we're going to work on recapturing some of those funds, right? And some of the owners who run that kind of business will have to pay for it.
I'll go as far as to say that legal counsel has committed to come to the meeting.
So that's good, but it makes sense as far as our tax dollars not going to subsidized cruddy, lazy business plans, cheap hotels, and it's good. Oh, and public camping that people came up in arms about last summer. The weather's getting warmer. Campsites popped up right along 28th Street. That'll be up too. So with that, one comment, motion seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Cascade Township proposed purchase agreement for the new fire station or for the new fire engine, item 035-2023. Thank you for sticking out this meeting, and sorry we didn't put you guys at the top.
Didn't have any false alarms.
Yeah, you could have had some.
It's been a long night. I appreciate the board hearing us out. I'd like to introduce firefighter Zeke Kadish. He is our vehicle maintenance officer. He's in charge of basically maintaining all of our apparatus. And he's been working with his team for the better part of a year to give you guys a good recommendation. So I'm going to turn it over to firefighter Kadish.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening. I know a few of you, many of you know me. Welcome, Treasurer. So as Chief mentioned, I am the vehicle maintenance officer, kind of handle the day-to-day tasks as far as establishing our budget over year to year. Chief and I meet every spring to go over capital improvement projects. So last year we began this process of taking a look at what was coming up in the next 5 years, And due to, like anything, inflation and the length of time it takes to build a fire truck, we started this process last year. So to start the process, we established a committee composed of myself, Fire Inspector Todd Pell, Firefighter John McCooch, Lieutenant Colin Forsley, Firefighter Mike Poolman, and Firefighter Joel Baker. So many of you might not be aware of how the process worked in the past, but it would typically be done by the leadership down. Chief Majors instilled that confidence in us and actually put it up to the end users, the guys that are using it day to day. So we appreciate that. So we established the committee, set the goal for the committee that to provide the most functional, well thought out apparatus to serve the members and residents of Cascade Charter Township. So there are a number of reasons for replacement. As I had mentioned, our vehicle capital improvement plan, we had slated this originally to be replaced in 2024. Due to the build times and the cost increases. We did have to push that to 25. But that's why we are here today, to try and secure this so that we can get a contract to get that delivered by 2025. Current build times right now are anywhere from, if you're lucky, 680 days to 750 plus, sometimes 800. So the sad reality is today we can build a fire station faster than we can build a fire truck. So that's why, again, we are here. So since 2019, as you'll see in some of our comparables, the build costs have essentially doubled. So back in 2012, when we bought engine 2, we paid in the $400,000 range. So today it's much higher. So there's also questions that arise of why are we replacing engine 2 versus engine 5, which is a couple years older at this point. And engine 2 was our first of the emissions era in 2012. So the cost to operate has substantially increased. And we did a study over the last 3 years, and we've almost 33% of our total maintenance budget is going to engine 2. So another reason. So our process, we did attend the Chiefs show last year to make contacts with all apparatus vendors that were there, looked at fire trucks, took notes, and kind of built what we wanted. From there, we surveyed the department members. That was everything from paid on call, the full-time, the officers, everybody involved. And we sent that survey out several times to get some of the feedback from everybody to get buy-in. So from there, we met with the local departments that have recently ordered, delivered, or in the last few years have taken delivery of a truck. So from there, toured Spartan Fire Apparatus. We assembled our own comprehensive list of specs and items that we wanted to see in the next truck as a department and what would serve that Station 2 Buttrick Fire Station District the best. After that, we did make a contact with Roger Engvall, who's from Toyne Fire Apparatus. Roger was gracious enough to help us kind of build that spec out without having a contract in place or anything secured. So that kind of gave us that pricing that we needed to know to make this presentation. So some of the current pinch points that we've had on engine 2 as of right now, we do have a very limited ladder accessibility. If you'll see from that picture, the current 3 engines that we bought, which were all demo trucks, are using a motorized ladder rack. So in a fire situation, we're waiting 20 to 30 seconds for that actuated ladder rack to come down before we can even get access to our ladders. So at the time, it was thought it was a great idea, but as we continue to move forward, and like I said, through the process of finding those pinch points, determined that that was a big one. The hose bed, too tall. So we can't, that back cover is where our main hose bed is. You have to climb the ladder to get up there. Last spring, when we had our fire on Old 28th Street right here, actually our fire marshal fell off the back of the truck pulling the hose out. So another pinch point as far as safety and worrisome in moving forward. Our other hose compartments are no longer designed for the new hose that's spec'd and the dimensions and size. And the pump panels being exposed on the side to all the harsh weather conditions. We deal with a lot of corrosion. Overall, that's probably one of the biggest maintenance issues that we have is corrosion just from the road salt and everything that we deal with. No matter what we do, it just takes its toll on that. So as we move to some of the local comparables, we did take a look at Alpine Township, which is a Rosenbauer very similar to what we have 3 of. A little bit different in their spec was their tank is 250 gallons smaller than ours. Their delivered price back in 2019, which is why I wanted to preface this, was $450,000. Today, that truck, which doesn't meet the same spec as what we're designing, is over $850,000. Caledonia Township, they took delivery of this last spring and they were very lucky on their timeline as far as build time and price. They ordered a truck that is going to be essentially very similar in some of the specs that we've mentioned, but also a little bit different. Their purchase price was $595, but as you can see, their original quoted price was $569. So as we progress throughout the last few years, you start seeing these price increases. So throughout the fire industry, the increases have been plentiful. So since January, when we started looking at these prices, there was an increase in January, and actually this Friday, there's another increase coming. So if we order that same truck today, that's nearly 900,000 as of today. Lowell Township just took delivery of this, and Ada Township actually ordered a mirror image of this truck. So as you can see, again, they spent 600 days. Their delivered price was $681. Price of order today, nearly 900,000. City of Granville, this was a demo truck that they, fortunately for them, they ordered. They didn't order, it was actually on the line, it was available, and they purchased that for 800,000 last year. So Spartan tour, where we went through the factory, we got to see the build process from start to finish, which actually the board members are invited to that if they ever would like to take a look. We got to see the process from start to finish, see how everything was built, and really kind of appreciate the workmanship. They are in Charlotte, Michigan. So 2 of our current engines are Spartan cabin chassis. Features for the next spec. We did want the low hose bed design, ladders through the rack. We wanted gear and medical compartments on the exterior of the cab, so to make it more of a clean cab design, especially post-pandemic, really trying to isolate where we're taking our contaminants in and out with us. Fully galvanized frame and components, like I said, to battle that corrosion and those issues, enclose the side mount of the pump. We're going with a larger motor to offset some of those maintenance issues. Station 2 district is very hilly. It's tough to traverse. Independent front suspension, same thing, maintenance issues, tough roads, and it's actually easier to control. We did spec an extreme duty front bumper that has functional compartments. There's air chocks. There's more ability to hold hose in the front bumper. So when we're winterizing hydrants and those items, we have that capability. Shorter wheelbase for maneuverability and keyless entry for added security. We did see Marne got one of their trucks stolen last year on the scene. So
Did they find it?
Yeah,
Who stole it? Like another municipality or
it ended up downtown and they just got out. So
downtown Grand Rapids?
yeah.
Where everything ends up.
What happens when you don't have a bus line?
Oh.
So as I mentioned, we've established all of those items of wish lists and we were able to build this spec, which is a Spartan cabin chassis run through towing, which does basically the pump cab back, which encompassed all of the needs of the department, everything that was on our wish list, and still very functional and serve that Station 2 district the best. So brass tacks, the estimated build cost of that truck is $900,000 as of today. We did put a contingency on there due to just the typical price increases that we've seen over the last 2 years, getting us a total build cost of $950,000. Build time from as of a couple of weeks ago was 730 days. And I do want to throw in there that, which Ben will go over some of the financial sides as we met with him a few times. There are prepaid discounts throughout this process. So with it being so drawn out, there's avenues where the township can save 40 to 70,000 on different prepayments. So in conclusion, our committee has worked to explore the best apparatus options for the fire department and township as a whole. Obviously, due to increasing costs and extended build times, it's our committee's recommendation we proceed with a truck built through Spartan outfitted by Toyne. This truck is tailored for the Station 2 area. It would meet the township needs for many years to come. I don't know if Ben, you want to touch on any of the financial side or if there are any questions.
Yeah, yep. So, it's interesting, right? Because we're looking at a 2025 expenditure. So there's certainly times to plan for it. But there's certain options that we will have as well. So I was able to talk to our bond counsel about the opportunity to do installment purchase if we want to. So we originally had the conversation about there's some other smaller capital improvements that are scheduled between 2024 and 2028. Kind of packaging them all into one bond issue. It really didn't make sense because the other capital improvements are pretty small in nature. Couple cars, redoing the tanker. So really looking at this, it's not something that we would do typical bond financing for, but we have the opportunity to do installment purchase if we want. So we could engage any of our local banks to, it's basically like a municipality taking out a car loan. There's a different process that you have to go through. There's certainly an opportunity for us to just pay cash for it as well. But I would note that we are going through a fire millage question in 2024, one that we're probably going to have to ask for a bit of an increase due to, like you're saying, right, when the price of trucks are doubling, your millage doesn't go as far as it used to before. So
It's just operation costs, right?
Yeah, just operation costs. So if we wanted to pay cash for it up front, we certainly could do something where we could, pay cash from one of our other funds, basically borrow from yourself. The long and short of it is there's several options to be able to pay for this. But there is a discount for prepaying for part of it when that chassis is delivered. Could save us approximately $40,000. So as we go through the budget process this year, one of the things that I'll present to the board is the couple different options for figuring out how to hopefully pay for part of it in 2024, so we can realize the discount, and then including the remainder of it in the 2025.
So what are we going to do with engine 2?
So with the new Station 1, we do have more space to house that. So it'll be moved into a reserve status, which does help ISO points for us too. So right now we do not have a reserve engine. So we will still use it for our paid on call and reserve responses.
So we'll keep it then.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're all still on that same 20-year plan. So 10 years of frontline, 5 years is paid on call, 5 years reserve, sold.
Some of the manufacturers, when you send a fire apparatus in for servicing, will offer a loaner, so to speak. Do they still do that anymore? So the need for a reserve apparatus is even more important today than what it was 20 years ago.
Increasingly more.
My
So
next
over-
question is, who the heck is Toyn? I've never heard of them.
Toyne is out of Iowa. And actually Roger is in the crowd tonight. So if you do have any questions,
They've been in business since 1942.
Just hidden by the cornfields.
They're right in the middle of one. That is correct.
And this is,
Away from Iowa tonight?
No.
Oh.
Other in Alabama.
Okay.
so this is a recommendation, the manufacturer and the outfitter that you guys have chosen as best fit for your needs.
correct.
I think public safety is our number one priority and really appreciate all the hard work you guys did. I know you took it really seriously and you weren't looking forward to coming to the board with a huge price tag, but it's not going to get cheaper and there's no other, better option. So we hear a ton about, everyone comes with an ask, right? Deer, dusty cars from pavement. Nothing's more important. When we prioritize, this is number one priority. So we appreciate how responsible you've been and how hard you've worked.
It appears as though the vast majority of the surrounding areas are satisfied with the Spartan brand still. Is that correct?
Correct. So
And
Spartan
your
does
experience, your maintenance experience with the Spartan brand has been,
top notch. The issues we have had as of late especially are not anything related to the cab and chassis. They are related to early stage emission systems. So 2012 was when, like I said, when engine 2 was first built, was the first stage of emission systems where DEF was included. So last year we had actually 2 of the engines had $8,000 emissions repairs and there's nothing you can do about it. So as soon as that emission system goes bad, it goes into limp mode and you can no longer use that truck until it's fixed.
With that, I make a motion that we approve the purchase of the fire engine as presented.
Shipley supports.
That's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee Shipley to approve the purchase agreement for the new fire engine as proposed. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next time we'll put you to the top of the agenda. Last new item, 036, 2023. Consider appointment of Parks and Recreation Director. I noticed, Ms. Wani, you've stuck it out the entire meeting. Really appreciate it. So more than welcome to hear from you or answer. I know you've got all the information about it. But I don't want to take Ben's, you go for it. I'm just gonna enjoy it. Go for it.
So our Parks and Committee recently adopted an ambitious 2023 to 2027 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I should say Township Parks Committee and Township Board. Among the many goals and objectives outlined in the document, the creation of a Parks and Recreation Director position is a key action item in the plan. The master plan goal area 3 is identified as refine the township's parks organization, structure, and support. And the action item 3.2.1 in that goal area is listed as hire a parks director that will manage all efforts related to parks. While this is the most direct reference to the creation of the position in the master plan, it's clear that nearly all the goal areas, including the exploration of a dedicated parks millage, is predicated on knowledgeable staff dedicated to parks and recreation efforts in the township. In addition, exploring the creation of a Parks and Recreation Director position is mirrored in the recently adopted Township Strategic Plan. Based on this information, the Parks Committee recommended the Township Board approve the creation of a Parks and Recreation Director position earlier this year. The position was created as a pay grade 7, similar to other department heads, and reflects the current market for the skill set. For 2023, the pay grade for this position is $67,000 to $91,000. The position was advertised in February, March on both township resources, which include the website, social media, and external sources, which included Indeed, Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Parks and Recreation Association, and the National Parks and Recreation Association, and netted nearly 30 highly qualified applicants, including several sitting parks and recreation directors from Michigan and other states. An interview team consisting of township staff, elected officials, and appointed officials conducted a first round of interviews with 5 applicants, and then the preferred applicant was then interviewed by a second interview team as well. With all of that, we're recommending that Melanie Mannion, Natural Resources Manager with Ottawa County Parks and Recreation, be appointed as the Parks and Recreation Director. She has 25 years of industry experience, including 12 years with the Ottawa County Parks, and 7 years prior to that with the Land Conservancy of West Michigan. Her extensive experience in land management is an excellent match for both our current park system, as well as our ambition to expand available park land and open space in Cascade Township. So furthermore, Ms. Mannion has experience working with external funding, including engaging donors and receiving grants, and her experience leading teams of both staff and volunteers will provide a valuable asset to the township organization and community. Should the Township Board approve the appointment, Ms. Mannion will begin for the township on May 1st, 2023. And this position is included in the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Trustee Shipley.
Of course. First of all, it appears as though even though we didn't ask about her background, she's well known to the Dr. Grand Valley State University. Based upon that, I would recommend that if the board verifies her hiring, that the first brick that is put in her backpack is a cotton picking deer population.
Yeah, we got lots of bricks. We're gonna put them all in at the same time.
I understand that there will be
We're gonna actually
probably,
have her backpack preloaded and it's gonna be sitting in her office for when she comes in.
do not overload the backpack like we've done to our township manager.
Nope, we're not. That's why we're getting a park director.
And also I understand that down the road somewhere there'll be a merging of the responsibilities for buildings and grounds / park director, which makes sense. I leave that to the full-time staff to figure out that quagmire. So with that, I make a motion that we go ahead with approving the appointment and let the township office do whatever they got to do with this.
Support.
That's a motion by trustee Shipley to approve the appointment of the Parks and Recreation Director, supported by treasurer Corstange. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Article 10, we have no discussions. We'll move right on to the last section, public comments. And thank you, everybody, for staying. Really appreciate it. Anything, whether it's on the agenda or not. Welcome, sir.
Hello, my name is Don Foss. I live at 7374 Gratian. On Tuesday afternoon, March 28, I attended the special board meeting to interview candidates for the vacant township treasurer position. There were two highly qualified candidates who are CPAs. The third candidate has a nursing background who works from home, approving large expenditures. She is a member of the Township Planning Commission and Township Parks Commission. During the interviews, important questions were not asked, such as, do you understand uniform chart of accounts, generally accepted accounting practices, and proper internal controls? Do you know how to implement sound cash management procedures and proper handling of funds, including knowledge of investment instruments and legal limitations on investments? Do you understand the audit process? A CPA could easily answer these questions. There are also questions about property tax administration, collection and distribution of tax revenues, collection of personal property taxes. A treasurer is expected to understand the accounting functions in the township office. Because these important questions were not asked, I wonder if some board members really understand what the treasurer does. After the interview is concluded, a motion was made to hire the candidate with a nursing background. It was obvious then that this motion was decided and rehearsed prior to the special board meeting. How convenient the board was convened when some board members were gone and were not present to interview the candidates and vote on this important hire. So much for transparency in township government. There were obvious errors in this process. Number one, township residents other than selected board members were not able to review candidate resumes. Number two, rather than scheduling a special board meeting done to accommodate a candidate's vacation schedule, the decision to hire could have been made at this meeting where more board members are present to interview and vote on candidates. Number three, not going outside, but hiring a person already heavily involved in township government. Madam Supervisor, this township deserves better than what transpired at the special board meeting. Frankly, in my opinion, the outcome of what took place at the special board meeting was a travesty. There was obvious disregard for the treasurer position and the financial integrity of Cascade Township. We now have a nurse as township treasurer, replacing our former treasurer whose background included being CFO in industry. The
Time's
former
up.
treasurer was praised for his invaluable contribution to Cascade Township. Seldom is a person praised for their accomplishments while working in a position that some board members consider a figurehead.
Thank you, sir.
I would like my comments included with the minutes of this meeting.
You can give them to the deputy clerk. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Scott Van Salkema, 2570 Orange. I, for one, am very happy with Ms. Corstange. I believe she did an excellent job tonight, especially with the whole road deal. She asked interesting questions. I actually had heard one other member of the audience say, what a refreshing treat from the old treasurer who was so quiet. So not to denigrate Ken Pierce, he was great, but thank you. I think you did a great job. There is no requirement that you had to be an accountant or a CPA. I love that you know the inner workings of the township governments and what's going on, and that you have been involved in the government. So you know the backstory and all that. Now you're only here for what? 16 more months in your position. So if someone else wants to step up, maybe those other two people that applied and they want to run, then they can do it. But so far, keep up the good work.
Thank you. And just so we're clear, you mentioned that it would be a different number of voters. That's not true. Last meeting when we voted, trustee McDonald was gone. OMA precludes members from participating if they're not there in person. It's not our rule. We just follow the rules. And this week we have Clerk Slater gone. So the vote number would have been the same. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Brian Holcomb, 3415 Glenstone Court. And my question first is for Ben for an update.
So for our local ticket, we're going through the process now. As expected, we heard from their attorney as soon as the ticket was issued. So they put in a FOIA request to get all of the background information, which is fine. So we've done that and believe there is a scheduled hearing coming up in the next week or two about that ticket. As far as the zoning opinion is concerned, myself and Supervisor Lesperance had a meeting today, again with the attorney. While he warned us that there was not going to be any definitive answer to our question and there only pros and cons, he did indicate that he would have it to us by Friday, was it?
I can't remember, but I just remember we said, give us a recommendation based on your legal.
Yeah, I think he committed to Friday, but
Okay.
I'm not certain.
To put it in writing, he'd kind of
Good.
already.
How long does it usually take to get a FOIA request and then get the information? Does that vary?
What do you mean?
When you request what, from the state, the FOIA, to find out exactly what Eagle stated.
So it can take anywhere between 5 days and 15 days.
5 and 15? Okay, so that's on the way.
So I've had the first, I have the first stuff already. So, and then I have the email that was sent when they did the
Extension? They extended it, but then have they given you the information of what they ruled on when they went and visit?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I do have that. I can share. I thought I had sent that to you already, but
Not
if I
yet.
hadn't, I can send it to you.
okay.
Yep.
So you've got that. Is there another FOIA file that we're waiting for?
So there's not another FOIA. So they sent us what their conclusion was. They sent that to us without me having to FOIA it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for waiting till 10 o'clock too. Any other comments? Virtually or in person?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to participate in this public comment, please raise your hand. None, Supervisor.
Thank you. Manager comments.
You guys have heard enough from me tonight.
Board member comments.
Loved the size of the crowd today. Stand up and salute all of you, including the ones that left early. Obviously, everybody has a difference of opinions, whether it's the selection of a new treasurer or whether it's to pave a road. It's tough sitting up here. And we try to take the majority of the residents' considerations into or their needs and their wants into consideration of making our decisions. We don't want to stall anything. Public hearings are the way of keeping things open and transparent. So thanks for being here, folks. Bring your neighbors back next time, 2 weeks. That's it.
Nope, hold on, I got one. Just want to mention, and I had it pulled up and I won't be able to find it. We just had at the Kent County Conservation District. I just want to recognize our chair of the Parks Committee, Ginny Wani, and also Janine, is it Janine Heibel, who both got recognized for their work here in Cascade, invasive species and all the hard work they've been doing locally. So thank you very much. And I'm thinking you are more than qualified from a financial expert perspective and as far as advocating serving residents' interests. So you put up with a lot of shots and I appreciate it. And you're right where you should be. Thank you. And the whole process was more than transparent. Just a lot of political maneuvering and misinformation behind the scenes, but that goes with the territory. Any other comments?
Move to adjourn.
You made the motion, I'll support it.
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're concluded. Thank you. And thank you for sticking around.